As the saying goes, cute girls have all the luck. Chin Yi-dong had just woken up when her cheapskate father barged in, claiming to have earth-shattering good news. Looking at her father's mischievous grin, Chin Yi-dong had a bad feeling. "My dear daughter," he began, "Daddy has wonderful news. The crown prince is selecting a concubine." Chin Yi-dong pondered this. Still recovering from a recent illness, she wondered what the prince's consort selection had to do with her. Her father, practically glowing with excitement, exclaimed, "Such a trivial matter. With Daddy's connections, it's already taken care of." Chin Yi-dong's expression shifted subtly. Her father beamed. "The Empress, mindful of your delicate health, has issued a special decree allowing you to participate in the selection. The wedding can take place right after your recovery." Chin Yi-dong felt a pang of despair and fainted dramatically. "You're truly my dear father. Do I look happy about this? Happy my foot." The scene shifts. Chin Yi-dong, moments ago a pampered young lady, is now slumped over a desk, fast asleep in a classroom. A worried classmate shakes her shoulder, try to wake her. It turns out Chin Yi-dong has time-traveled to ancient times. In this era, she's the delicate daughter of the Minister of Revenue. And as luck would have it, she's just been nominated as a potential consort for the crown prince, thanks to her dear old dad's help. She'd racked her brains to avoid the selection process, narrowly escaping it once, only to fall into this pit dug by her foolish father. Thinking fast, she decided to continue feigning illness. To avoid delaying the selection, "Father, please decline on my behalf." The minister gave a sly smile. "Silly girl, at this point, who cares about the selection process? I've already spoken to the Empress. The selection is a mere formality. It starts today. The young ladies have all been specially trained. They're not only elegant and graceful, but also incredibly fit. You have nothing to worry about." Chin Yi-dong's composure shattered, but reality proved even more shattering. The next day, Crown Princess Boot Camp officially began. Balancing bowls on their heads, backs ramrod straight, the girls endured the terrifying moment of matron. Chin Yi-dong took tiny, careful steps forward. The matron, cane in hand, ensured even their kneeling posture was impeccably trained. And posture training was just the first step. Inner refinement was also essential. Painting and calligraphy were mandatory skills. Seeing Chin Yi-dong's unique rendition of a cow, the enraged matron grabbed her cane and chased Chin Yi-dong, giving her a sound thrashing. Chin Yi-dong could only flee. Hearing the commotion, the minister, filled with fatherly pride and high hopes for his daughter, smiled contentedly. Chin Yi-dong's cries echoed through the courtyard. This was no life for a human being. Lying on her bed, Chin Yi-dong felt utterly defeated. Her maid rushed to comfort her. "Just endure the selection, and then you'll be free." Chin Yi-dong didn't care. "What stupid selection? It's torture. Only food can soothe my wounded soul." But the next moment, Chin Yi-dong stared blankly at her bowl. Where was the meat? The maid explained that since Chin Yi-dong was just recovering, matronly had ordered a bland diet. Chin Yi-dong decided to run away. She bolted for the door, only to be met by a phalanx of matrons. Good heavens! One matron wasn't enough. Now there were 12 maids to keep watch over her. Chin Yi-dong felt another wave of despair wash over her. Lying on the floor, the harsh reality manifested as a bitter smile on her face. Thus, under the relentless tutelage of Matron Li and the watchful eyes of 20 maids, Chin Yi-dong continued her blissful life day after day. Finally, the crown princess selection officially began. Highborn young ladies from noble families lined up, a truly magnificent spectacle. As the minister's daughter, Chin Yi-dong was scheduled to perform, showcasing her beauty to the crown prince. The thought of performing sent her spiraling into despair once more. As a long-suffering social phobe, the very idea of performing was enough to send shivers down Chin Yi-dong's spine. But what was even more unsettling was the fact that she was apparently supposed to perform something, and she hadn't even been informed. Hadn't she signed up for a matchmaking event? Why was there a talent show involved? Though, she supposed if this was a competition to become the crown prince's consort, then naturally, all the noble ladies present would have to showcase their accomplishments. Take Miss Huang Yuro, daughter of Magistrate Huang, over there. Exceptionally skilled at playing the qin, she clearly had her sights set on the position of crown princess. And then there was Miss Yu, daughter of the current left chancellor. Proficient in all the arts, music, chess, calligraphy, and painting, she would undoubtedly be Chin Yi-dong's biggest rival. Chin Dong, however, remained utterly unconcerned, mentally sighing. Who cared who was who? She had zero interest in becoming the crown princess. Still, the crown prince certainly had it good. So many beautiful women vying for his attention. Meanwhile, the servant girl beside Chin Dong fretted over what talent she would present. Chin Dong pondered. Music, chess, calligraphy, painting, she was hopeless at all of them. Her only real skill was taekwondo. Performing a barehanded brick-breaking routine in this setting would certainly be unique. There it was, her performance inspiration. The servant girl, blissfully unaware of the impending chaos, continued to fuss. Inside the grand hall, the selection process for the crown princess was getting underway. Suddenly, the announcement of the crown prince's arrival echoed through the hall. The assembled noble ladies were instantly captivated by his magnificent appearance. The power of infatuation, it seemed, transcended time and space. He was as refined as jade, a prince beyond compare. His handsome features and elegant attire even brought a faint blush to Chin Dong's cheeks. With the ringing of a bell by a young eunuch, the selection ceremony officially began. The first to perform was Miss Zheng. Her hands gracefully moved over the strings of the qin, producing a beautiful melody. Chin Dong, in the audience, began clapping enthusiastically. The other young ladies, startled by this unexpected display, turned to stare. Why was someone cheering for their competition? Her outburst was quickly hushed by her servant, but it was clear she genuinely enjoyed the music. One after another, the noble ladies showcased their talents. Watching the graceful performances, Chin Dong couldn't help but think, wouldn't it be wonderful if all these talented women were hers? As another contestant finished her performance and left the stage, the young eunuch presiding over the selection finally called Chin Dong's name. In an instant, she became the center of attention. Already, she whispered, surprised. The eunuch simply nodded. Panic seized Chin Dong. Couldn't she just be a spectator? Her servant offered words of encouragement, but Chin Dong just wanted to disappear. As a chronic social phobe, even introducing herself was a struggle. The sheer number of people in the audience was overwhelming. So overwhelmed, in fact, that as she stepped onto the stage, she completely forgot what she was supposed to do. Seeing her flustered state, some of the other ladies began to snicker. Just then, the young eunuch announced the start of Chin Dong's performance, and the talent she had chosen was explosive. The word taekwondo rippled through the audience, sparking a wave of confused murmurs. What in the world was taekwondo? Surely, it couldn't be anything refined. Chin Dong took a deep breath. The essential principles of taekwondo, swift strikes, proper posture, and an unwavering display of strength. As she assumed her stance, a strange silence fell over the hall. Chin Dong, sensing the awkwardness, felt her face flush. Then, the silence broke into uproarious laughter. What kind of bizarre performance was this? She looked like a monkey performing tricks at a zoo, some commented. Chin Dong bristled at their mockery. Her martial arts skills had won numerous awards. Fine then, she would show them a real display of skill. She focused her energy, and the audience, assuming her performance was over, began to disperse in disappointment. Then, Chin Dong closed her eyes. He slowly raised his left hand, facing the large audience before him and bellowing, "Bring me a brick." The maids below were dumbfounded. "Miss, what are you trying to do? What the heck are you going to do?" "I'm going to perform brick breaking for you all." Chin Dong's words sent ripples of astonishment through the crowd. A young eunuch nearby suddenly looked troubled, casting a pleading glance towards the crown prince in the distance. The crown prince, however, remained calm and collected. "Since the young lady wants a brick," he declared, "then give her one. I, too, want to see what new trick she has up her sleeve." Hearing this, the little eunuch immediately ordered someone to bring a brick. Chin Dong, standing to the side, wore a thoughtful expression. Suddenly, a glint flashed in Chin Dong's eyes. Two servants, carrying a single, solitary brick, approached her. Looking at the flimsy red brick before her, Chin Dong's face displayed a look of disdain. She took another deep breath. The Chin family members in the audience watched with bated breath. Minister Tai was worried that Chin Dong would hurt herself. Chin Dong, her expression unchanged, raised her hand. Under the shocked gazes of the crowd below, she brought her palm down sharply on the red brick. The onlookers gasped. Chin Dong's face crumpled. Her delicate hand, which had struck the brick, let out a pathetic thud. The next moment, Chin Yidong clutched her wrist and howled in pain. The audience erupted in laughter. Broken brick or not, this was definitely the most entertaining performance they had seen all day. A young noblewoman to the side sneered. Just as I thought, a vulgar display. The other refined young lady stared, dumbfounded. Two young noblemen watched the utterly embarrassed Chin Yidong on stage. I wonder whose daughter that is, one murmured. She's certainly interesting. I heard Minister Tai's daughter was gentle and lovely. Clearly, rumors can't be trusted. The crowd continued to laugh at Chin Yidong's comical failure. Only her father went up on stage, concerned about her injury. The crown prince, captivated by the amusing young woman, couldn't tear his eyes away. I've utterly humiliated myself, Chin Yidong thought. I have all these skills, yet I'm defeated by this frail body. But this isn't a bad outcome. With this little stunt, father will surely abandon any thoughts of me becoming the crown princess. Father, I'm so sorry I've disgraced you, she wailed, tears streaming down her face, while inwardly rejoicing. The crown prince wouldn't be so bizarre as to choose a woman who made such a fool of herself as his consort, would he? As she thought this, Chin Yidong suddenly stumbled and collapsed, her face paling dramatically. In the blink of an eye, Chin Yidong lay motionless on the ground. The presiding eunuch and Minister Tai were horrified. Finally, she thought, I can get some rest. And so, after Chin Yidong's spectacular display, the selection for the crown princess came to a close. A nobleman quietly pushed open the crown prince's door. He had come to inquire about the outcome of the selection process and discover who had won the prince's favor. The crown prince, however, maintained an air of mystery. It was clear from his expression that he already had someone in mind. The graceful dancer, Yu, or the musically talented Huang Yuro. Why not just marry the brickbreaker? That little thing was quite entertaining. Imagine coming home tired and having someone put on a show like that. Not a bad suggestion. The nobleman was stunned. Was the crown prince joking? Marrying that woman would make him the laughingstock of the entire city. But the prince didn't seem to be jesting. Chin Yidong was in a state of panic. In this world, deceiving the emperor was a crime punishable by death. Feigning illness to avoid the selection process, if discovered, would certainly lead to her demise. But after 2.5 seconds of terror, her anxiety subsided. After all, she had made such a spectacle of herself during the selection. Any sane person wouldn't choose her as their consort. Finally, she could enjoy a peaceful life at home. Just then, her father burst into her room. Her father, who always brought good news and concealed bad, had another grand announcement to make. The crown prince had decreed that Chin Yidong be chosen as his concubine. In a few days, she was to enter the palace and be married. Hearing this news, Chin Yidong felt like she'd swallowed a landmine and was about to explode. As night fell, she lay in bed, tossing and turning, unable to sleep at the thought of marrying into the royal family. Did this prince have some strange fetish? All those accomplished young ladies who participated in the selection process, they were so outstanding. Why did this strange fellow choose her? The situation was dire. She had to quickly find a way to escape this marriage. So, the next day, Chin Yidong, feigning illness, entered the room, clutching her forehead. Suddenly, her foot caught on the threshold, and she tumbled forward uncontrollably. Her maid was startled and didn't know what to do. Chin Yidong lay on the floor, her body trembling. A moment later, she fainted. The whole performance was seamlessly executed. The maid cried out in alarm. Chin Yidong thought, I'd rather die of illness than marry that strange prince. The maid hurriedly helped her up. She lay quietly in bed. Soon after, her father arrived with a physician, both hurrying. He looked at his precious daughter in bed with a pained expression. Chin Yidong, in turn, put on a frail, sickly appearance. Seeing his daughter in such apparent pain, her father quickly ordered the physician to diagnose her. The expressions on their faces were grave. The atmosphere grew tense. But then, something strange happened. After a thorough examination, the physician couldn't find any sign of illness. Chin Yidong lay in bed, expressionless. She was only pretending. After all, although she wasn't truly ill, she couldn't let the physician discover her deception. So, in the next moment, Chin Yidong suddenly began to feign another bout of illness. Seeing this, her father broke out in a cold sweat. His precious daughter seemed perfectly healthy one moment, then complaining of headaches and stomachaches the next. Taking advantage of her father's concern, Chin Yidong tried to broach the subject of calling off the marriage to the prince. But her father, preoccupied with her supposed illness, was still focused on the wedding. Seeing Seeing that his daughter's condition remained a mystery, he quickly ordered the physician to examine her again. Seeing this, Chin Yi-dong, still pretending to be ill in bed, secretly rejoiced. Her plan was working. The physician and her father, standing by her bedside, were incredibly anxious. Just then, a man entered the room. It was someone from the Crown Prince's palace, sent to bring Chin Yi-dong for a prenuptial medical examination. Chin Yi-dong was both amused and exasperated. Ancient customs were surprisingly forward-thinking. To prevent prospective brides from concealing illnesses, the court implemented a mandatory prenuptial examination. The imperial physician entered. Seeing that she couldn't escape this, Chin Yi-dong panicked. The eunuch accompanying the physician reassured her that it was just a routine procedure and nothing to worry about. Hearing this, her father stepped forward. Chin Yi-dong hadn't been feeling well these past few days, so this was a perfect opportunity for a checkup. Meanwhile, Chin Yi-dong was racking her brains for an escape route. She wasn't technically deceiving the emperor. The physician was checking for concealed illnesses, and she had none. Even if they found nothing, the physician wouldn't say anything. The room fell silent. After a thorough examination, her father anxiously inquired about his daughter's condition. As expected, the physician declared Chin Yi-dong to be in perfect health. Just then, Chin Yi-dong cried out. She clutched her stomach and rolled around on the bed, startling the physicians. But the imperial physician, with decades of experience, could find no ailment. Seeing Chin Yi-dong writhing in apparent agony, her father began to doubt the imperial physician's competence. Had his skills deteriorated? But physician Liu stood firm. If he declared a healthy person ill, he would be a quack. With that, he turned to leave. His medical skill was renowned throughout the palace. If even physician Liu declared Chin Yi-dong healthy, what was wrong with her? Baffled, the eunuch decided to return to the palace and request more physicians to examine her. Chin Yi-dong sat up in bed and watched the eunuch leave, finally breathing a sigh of relief. She hadn't anticipated the prenuptial examination. She lay back down, about to fall asleep, when her father, mistaking her exhaustion for a worsening of her symptoms, thought she was about to faint. Her father and the physician rushed to her side. Fortunately, the physician realized she was simply falling asleep from exhaustion. Her father then ordered all the renowned physicians in the capital to be summoned to treat Chin Yi-dong. Meanwhile, physician Liu reported the day's events to the crown prince. The prince laughed heartily. This young woman was quite amusing. He decided he must meet her himself. Late that night, Chin Yi-dong sat alone in the kitchen, feeling miserable. She hadn't eaten all day in her efforts to avoid the prince. The food on the table had been completely overturned. Chin Yi-dong, hidden in the kitchen, felt like a starving ghost reborn. Just then, laughter drifted in from the courtyard. She froze. Peeking through the door, a wave of unease washed over her. But in the next moment, the unfamiliar man outside bowed respectfully. He explained he was a kitchen servant, drawn by the noise. Chin Yi-dong's mind raced. She claimed she was also just looking around, and that he mustn't tell anyone she'd been trying to sneak a bite. Caught red-handed, she desperately searched for an excuse to get rid of him. This was a disaster. Then, out of the blue, the man brought up the crown prince's selection of a consort. What was so bad about marrying the crown prince? Fine clothes, delicious food, a life of luxury. Chin Yi-dong scoffed. She had no desire to wait on someone hand and foot or to compete with a dozen other women for a man she didn't even like. Was the crown prince's brain addled? He had so many beautiful women to choose from, yet he picked the one who made a fool of herself in public. She'd only feigned illness out of desperation. The man's next words, however, made Chin Yi-dong's jaw drop. She practically spat on the ground. Love at first sight? She'd never believe it. No sane man would fall for a woman who tripped at the selection ceremony. She hoped the idiot crown prince would just have her executed and be done with it. Oh, and by the way, she added with a sardonic smile, threatening the stranger, keep quiet about me being here tonight. With that, she sauntered out of the kitchen, leaving the man staring after her with a sly grin. 3 days later, Chin Yi-dong lay listlessly on her bed. The crown prince still hadn't rescinded the proposal or sent anyone to arrest her. Was she truly doomed to marry into the royal family? Oh heavens, please have mercy. I really don't want to marry him. Elsewhere, a refined gentleman entered the crown prince's study. He'd assumed the prince's interest in Chin Yi-dong was a passing whim, but it seemed he was serious about marrying her. The crown prince smiled faintly. Hadn't this gentleman been supportive of the idea before? Now he was singing a different tune. The gentleman claimed he'd only been joking. Marrying Qin Dong would make the crown prince the laughingstock of the city. Finally, the prince revealed his true motives. He wanted to marry Qin Dong precisely because of her apparent lack of intelligence. She wouldn't be a spy planted by someone else. Besides, certain interesting things about her had piqued his curiosity. Countless women vied for his attention, yet Qin Dong actively avoided him, preferring execution to marriage. Someone like that was unlikely to be a threat. The gentleman was astonished. Such a woman truly existed? She seemed harmless enough, but considering everything, Qin Dong's behavior seemed deliberately calculated to mislead the crown prince. But the prince remained confident, declaring he had everything under control. The wedding day approached swiftly. On this less than auspicious day, Qin Dong was to be led to the altar, or rather, the executioner's block as she saw it. A throng of servants waited outside her family's estate, ready to escort her to her marital doom. Female officials stood by as well. Despite her resistance, Qin Dong could only resign herself to fate. Meanwhile, the crown prince, mounted on his steed, prepared to receive his bride. The procession moved through the city with drums and gongs, the prince beaming in anticipation of the ceremony. The gentleman beside him inquired about his feelings. The prince responded with a playful smirk, wondering if Qin Dong might perform some sort of dramatic stunt, perhaps breaking rocks on her chest during the wedding. The procession arrived at the Qin estate. Tradition dictated that the bride's feet mustn't touch the ground before the ceremony. Decked in her elaborate wedding attire, Qin Dong struggled under the weight of the heavy ornaments. To accommodate Qin Dong, the prince had dispensed with many of the customary rituals. He even spoke kindly to the servants, requesting that they not restrict her and that they treat her as an equal. Finally, the moment of departure arrived. Her father placed his precious daughter in the prince's hands. As the prince lifted her, a thrill went through him. Was this what a bridal carry felt like? Qin Dong, for the first time in her life, was being held like this by a man. The prince promised her father he would take good care of her. Her father beamed with satisfaction. The auspicious hour had arrived. The crown prince carried Qin Dong to the bridal palanquin. With a shout from the attendants, the 8-bearer sedan chair carried her away from her family home. The thought that she might never return filled her with a mix of dread and resignation. Qin Dong couldn't help the pang of sadness in his chest, especially when he thought of his cheap old dad. Right then and there, he made up his mind. If that dog of a crown prince dared to treat him poorly, he'd flee the palace at the first opportunity. The wedding hall in the crown prince's residence was solemn and grand. The civil and military officials present wore beaming smiles. Under their watchful gaze, the newlywed couple bowed to heaven and earth. The ceremony was considerably more concise than tradition dictated. Despite the streamlined proceedings, Qin Dong felt utterly exhausted. As they slowly completed the ritual bows to each other, the moment for entering the bridal chamber finally arrived. He had to admit, the crown prince had certainly made the wedding as painless as possible, seemingly to accommodate him. Simple, concise, and all that. But then the matron had mentioned the bridal chamber. Who enters the bridal chamber? Qin Dong's composure shattered. The thought of having to do that with someone he didn't like was a torture no less agonizing than being sliced to pieces. He absolutely could not consummate the marriage with the crown prince. He had to find a way to escape this. Meanwhile, the crown prince pushed open a window and gazed outside. It was supposed to be his wedding night, yet he lingered in the banquet hall, showing no sign of leaving. A moment of spring night is worth 1,000 gold pieces. Everyone wondered why the crown prince still hadn't left. With an air of nonchalance, he declared his intention to stay, wanting to see what kind of surprise Qin Dong had in store for him. Back in the bridal chamber, Qin Dong was racking his brains for a way to avoid the crown prince's affections. His eyes fell upon a round table in the distance, and a mischievous glint sparked in his eyes. A plan began to form. Qin Dong scattered beans across the bed, a thick, dense layer of them. With the air of someone who had just completed a masterpiece, he prepared for a showdown. He glanced at the empty doorway, then froze. A sound reached his ears, hurried footsteps approaching from outside. Panic seized him. He quickly pulled the wedding veil over his head, feigning composure as he sat on the bed, as if nothing had happened. Had the crown prince finally arrived? Watching the approaching feet, Qin Yidong's heart was a whirlwind of emotions. But the person who entered wasn't the crown prince. It was the crown prince's personal maid, there to help Qin Yidong wash up. Embarrassed, he lifted his veil. "Where's the crown prince? Isn't his highness coming?" The maid explained that the crown prince had drunk too much, wasn't feeling well, and had retired to his study. Qin Yidong breathed a sigh of relief. It was a good thing he hadn't come. Otherwise, he would have had to figure out how to deal with him. But what about his bed full of hidden weapons? As the maid moved forward to prepare the bed, Qin Yidong could only offer her an awkward thank you. Late into the night, the crown prince sat in his study, leisurely sipping tea. "A moment of spring night is worth 1,000 gold pieces," his friend remarked. "Are you really not going to the bridal chamber?" The crown prince's firm "no" startled his friend. Wasn't he worried about gossip? Was he really, as the rumors suggested, a deviant? "You pervert, don't even think about turning your attention to me." The crown prince's face darkened. He hadn't gone to the bridal chamber because he'd seen the clear reluctance in Qin Yidong's eyes and didn't want to impose himself. Meanwhile, Qin Yidong was sound asleep, slumbering peacefully until the sun was high in the sky. The servants, noticing he was awake, hurried in to attend to him. Qin Yidong blinked in surprise. Did he really need this many people just to wash his face? The maids dressed him in fresh clothes, a mix of formal and casual attire. Under their watchful eyes, even Qin Yidong, who usually preferred rough-and-tumble clothes, felt compelled to behave with a certain decorum. He then began his daily martial arts practice. Something about this married life felt off. He was married to the crown prince, wasn't he? Why hadn't he seen him at all? He'd almost forgotten he was married. He was reminded that the crown prince had attended court that morning, which was why he hadn't been seen. But Qin Yidong fell into thought. The crown prince hadn't even come to the bridal chamber the night before. Was it deliberate or just an oversight? Either way, it was fine by him. They could stay out of each other's way, live their own lives, preferably never crossing paths again. The thought filled him with a strange sense of elation. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. Qin Yidong's life was comfortable and, dare he say, enjoyable. He ate his meals on time, practiced his martial arts, and the mysterious crown prince hadn't bothered him once. But then, the whispers of the servants caught his attention. The crown prince hasn't visited the crown princess's chambers in 3 days. Is it because she's so hideously ugly he can't bear to look at her? And I heard that during the selection, Qin Yidong practically begged to be chosen for the crown prince. Overhearing this, Qin Yidong was so furious he lost his appetite. He arrived at the wall and eavesdropped on the maid's conversation. This crown princess is utterly useless, a complete waste of space. If it weren't for her influential father, she wouldn't have been able to marry into the crown prince's residence. Hearing this, Qin Yidong's eyes flashed with anger. It was clearly that bastard crown prince who had shamelessly insisted on marrying him. Qin Yidong's roar silenced the entire area. The two servants gossiping in the courtyard were terrified to their very core when they saw the crown princess arrive in person. At that moment, Qin Yidong suddenly spoke. "The crown prince hasn't entered the bridal chamber for such a long time. Could it be that he truly is the rumored broken sleeve?" He turned to look at Chuanxia, the maid who had just slandered him. He asked Chuanxia what she thought of Crown Prince Duanxiu. Seeing this, Chuanxia quickly shut her mouth. But Qin Yidong seized the opportunity, suggesting that Chuanxia's silence was an admission of the rumors. The next moment, Qin Yidong turned and returned to his room. Since he was being portrayed so scandalously, he couldn't be the only one dragged through the mud. The two maids exchanged glances, strange expressions on their faces. "We've heard that His Highness is a broken sleeve. To think that someone so handsome would have such a preference. And young Master Lon often goes to His Highness's room alone. No wonder the crown princess has been neglected since marrying in." The rumors began to take an interesting turn. 2 days quickly passed. Now the entire crown prince's residence was abuzz with the rumor that the crown prince was a broken sleeve. As the crown princess, Qin Yidong was naturally affected. But the next moment, Qin Yidong burst into laughter, tears streaming down his face. He hadn't expected these ancient people to be so easily fooled. The crown prince's residence was far more interesting and comfortable than his own family's estate. Having been idle for so many days, it was time to find a way to strengthen his weak physique once more. Elsewhere, a young eunuch reported everything that had happened recently in the residence to the crown prince. The crown prince laughed upon hearing the report. He hadn't expected the consort he had gone to such lengths to marry into the residence to spread such rumors about him. But the crown prince didn't seem angry. He even instructed the eunuch to protect Qin Yidong well. The young eunuch bowed his head in agreement. Watching the young eunuch depart, the crown prince wore a curious expression. Suddenly, a guard entered the room. It was the crown princess requesting an audience. Intrigued, the crown prince wondered what tricks Qin Yidong had up his sleeve this time. Qin Yidong and his attendant stood outside. The crown prince didn't open the door for a long time. Qin Yidong thought the crown prince was deliberately avoiding him. If the crown prince truly refused to see him, how could he carry out his grand plan? Before he could finish his thought, the door to the crown prince's study opened. The guard summoned Qin Yidong to meet the crown prince. Qin Yidong was now energized, but due to his position, he had to maintain a dignified composure in front of the servants. The crown prince was calmly reviewing memorials in his study. Qin Yidong stepped forward and bowed. Though each harbored their own secret intentions, the two of them interacted with polite decorum. Looking at his husband, whom he hadn't seen for many days, Qin Yidong said he had come to ask for his help with something. The crown prince assumed Qin Yidong had sought him out because he couldn't bear being neglected for the past few days. But Qin Yidong firmly denied this. Faced with Qin Yidong's innocent appearance, the crown prince, believing he had everything under control, responded confidently, "Speak freely." With that, Qin Yidong suddenly walked towards the crown prince. He then proceeded to circle the crown prince, scrutinizing him intensely. Even the crown prince, heir to the throne, was flustered by Qin Yidong's inexplicable actions. Then Qin Yidong reached out and firmly squeezed the crown prince's shoulder. The crown prince's expression became extremely awkward, but that wasn't all. Qin Yidong, now seemingly possessed by some strange force, slowly slid his hand down from the crown prince's shoulder. Watching Qin Yidong's bizarre movements, the crown prince's mind reeled, and the scene before them thoroughly frightened the maids observing nearby. They hadn't expected the crown princess to be so audacious. The next moment, the crown prince sprang to his feet, putting a table's distance between himself and Qin Yidong. "What are you doing? It's only been a few days." A proper young lady from a respectable family acting like such a pervert. To this, Qin Yidong smiled knowingly. "Your Highness, please don't misunderstand. I bear no ill will. I was merely examining your Highness's physique. As they say, a strong body makes for a strong nation. As the future ruler of Qi, your Highness naturally requires a robust constitution to shoulder such a heavy responsibility." Hearing this, the crown prince's face relaxed into a relieved smile. However, the maid standing nearby was convinced that Qin Yidong's actions were a prelude to some sort of intimate encounter with the prince. But Qin Yidong's next words nearly made the maid spit blood. "I've come to ask your Highness to join me for a run." Truly, the crown princess's thought process defied conventional understanding. For a newly married couple who hadn't even consummated their marriage to suggest a run after days apart. What a bizarre turn of events. Yet Qin Yidong firmly insisted that the prince accompany her in her exercise regime. The prince, for his part, appeared magnanimous. "A mere run? Very well, I shall accompany you." However, before agreeing, the prince demanded that Qin Yidong promise him one thing. Qin Yidong, with her own hidden agenda, readily agreed. But the prince, at this point, decided to be coy. He claimed he hadn't yet thought of what he wanted, and would tell her later when he remembered. Hearing this, Qin Yidong agreed without hesitation. "Since we have agreement, we shall start running up the mountain tomorrow." "Wait, weren't we going for a run? Why has it suddenly become running up a mountain?" "Woman, why do you keep changing your mind?" As his words faded, dawn broke. The prince lay peacefully asleep in his bed. Suddenly, a frantic knocking startled him awake. Qin Yidong, clad in vibrant red, burst into the room. Full of energy, she immediately attempted to drag her new husband out of bed for their mountain run. The crown prince bolted upright in alarm. "It's still dark. Why must we run up a mountain instead of sleeping peacefully at home?" Qin Yidong placed a hand on his shoulder. "My dear husband, didn't we agree yesterday? Now that I'm here, let's just get going." With that, she dragged the reluctant prince off towards their mountainous endeavor. The next morning arrived, and Qin Dong, true to their agreement, once again dragged her dear prince from his slumber. On the third day, Qin Dong continued, refusing to miss any opportunity to torment the prince. The prince, however, seemed to be adapting. Even as he was dragged down the mountain, he still fought to steal a few precious moments of sleep. Until the nth day, the perpetually sleep-deprived prince finally reached his limit, unable to bear Qin Dong's relentless daily torture. To this, Qin Dong responded nonchalantly, "If your highness is tired, I can go running by myself." Hearing this, the prince's masculine pride ignited. If Qin Dong, a woman, wasn't complaining of fatigue, how could he, a man, be the first to fall? With a grand gesture, he declared that he wouldn't need to be dragged out of bed today. He would walk down the mountain himself. His bravado was short-lived. Moments later, he collapsed, exhausted, in his study. Since he couldn't escape this torment, he decided he wouldn't suffer alone. The next morning, a cacophony of shouts from outside roused Qin Dong from her sleep. She slowly emerged from her room to find a line of maids standing in formation. Chanting in unison, they were drilling in Qin Dong's courtyard. "What's going on here?" Qin Dong looked on in bewilderment. Suddenly, the prince appeared behind her. After several days of contemplation, he had decided that exercise shouldn't be a solitary pursuit. The servants of the crown prince's estate also needed to improve their physical fitness. Thus, he had ordered them to run around the garden every morning. "My dear wife, do you not think your husband is incredibly clever?" Hearing this, Qin Dong felt as if a giant cauldron had been dropped over her head. A moment later, she stormed out of the garden in a huff. The rhythmic sound of running feet echoed through the crown prince's residence. Time flew by, and a month quickly passed. The result of a whole month of rigorous training, Chunxia, the maidservant, had somehow developed a set of remarkably toned muscles. Thanks to this month of intense exercise, not only the maidservants but Qin Dong herself had become quite muscular. This startled Qin Dong. After all, the exercise was meant for self-improvement. For a young woman like herself, having only muscles wasn't ideal. She needed to find a way to sculpt her physique. Lost in thought, she was interrupted by the maidservant, who brought unwelcome news. The crown prince's wet nurse was coming to the residence to confront Qin Dong. Qin Dong was puzzled by the wet nurse's status and authority. Urged by her maidservant, Qin Dong hurriedly got up to bathe and dress. In the hallway, the wet nurse bustled towards Qin Dong's quarters. The crown prince spent every day alone with his wife in the back garden. So why was the wet nurse so angry? Despite the couple's outward displays of affection, rumors circulated that their time in the garden was dedicated solely to physical exercise, not romance. This infuriated the wet nurse. The crown prince might be forgiven for his naivete, but surely the crown princess should know better. The wet nurse was determined to see for herself what kind of woman this crown princess was, the one who had so bewitched the usually composed crown prince. Chunxia busied herself preparing for the wet nurse's arrival. Qin Dong, still new to the palace, was curious about the wet nurse's position and influence. The crown prince had lost his mother at a young age, so the emperor had appointed a wet nurse for him. The wet nurse had raised the crown prince with her own hands, forging a deep bond between them. He regarded her as his own mother. Understanding dawned on Qin Dong. But why was the wet nurse so eager to see her? Was it to pressure her about producing an heir? These women of ancient times, none of them were simple. The maidservant assured her that the wet nurse was gentle and unlikely to be difficult unless something serious was amiss. Just then, the wet nurse pushed open Qin Dong's door. Qin Dong sat on the bed, observing the wet nurse she was meeting for the first time. The wet nurse, not one for arrogance, bowed respectfully to Qin Dong despite her position. Qin Dong quietly studied the wet nurse's demeanor as she dipped into a curtsy. But the moment she saw Qin Dong, her brow furrowed and anger flashed in her eyes. She had heard about Qin Dong's embarrassing incident during the selection process. The wet nurse hadn't cared about that incident, but now, as the crown princess, Qin Yidong represented the crown prince's residence. Her every action had to reflect her status. Qin Yidong smiled outwardly, but inwardly, she knew the wet nurse was here to find fault. Embroidery was an essential skill for a woman of noble birth, especially a favored consort. Qin Yidong, however, was inept at needlework. Therefore, the wet nurse had invited Yuan Zixian, the most beautiful woman in the Qi kingdom, to tutor Qin Yidong in embroidery. Qin Yidong immediately refused. She had no time for embroidery. She had absolutely no talent for it. No one could teach her. The wet nurse needn't bother. The wet nurse's face hardened. The problem wouldn't lie with Yuan Zixian. The crown princess simply needed to apply herself. With that, she bowed and left the bedchamber without giving Qin Yidong a chance to argue. Qin Yidong and Chuanxia exchanged worried glances as they watched the wet nurse depart. "We'll face whatever comes our way," Qin Yidong declared. "I don't believe I can't handle a Yuan Zixian." She rose and instructed Chuanxia to deliver a bowl of the medicine prepared yesterday to the crown prince. Late into the night, a strange aroma emanated from the mysterious concoction. The crown prince stared at the bowl of dark liquid his beloved wife had sent, his face a mask of displeasure. "What is this?" he wondered aloud. Before he could even ask, "Please bring this medicine to the crown prince, Your Highness," Qin Yidong said, presenting the bowl. "It's a specially prepared Shirquan Dabutang, a restorative tonic," I simmered myself. At her words, the crown prince shot to his feet. Though outwardly calm, he couldn't shake the feeling that his crown princess was actively trying to poison him. Unfazed by his apprehension, Qin Yidong urged, "Your Highness, please drink it quickly. It won't be as effective if it gets cold." Seeing her insistence, the crown prince, summoning his courage, took the bowl from her hands and downed the tonic in one gulp. The taste made his face contort in disgust. A moment later, he abruptly turned and left. Under Qin Yidong's puzzled gaze, he practically fled the room. "What was that stuff?" he muttered to himself. Qin Yidong smiled faintly. "Just a normal restorative tonic," she replied to the empty room. "Though it seems a bit potent." Alarm jolted through her as the crown prince, now back in her view, flushed crimson. His strong frame began to sway precariously. In a flash, he stumbled forward, collapsing against Qin Yidong. A wave of inexplicable heat washed over him, leaving him drenched in sweat. He gently cupped her chin, and a jolt of electricity sparked between them. The two, married for some time, but still strangers in many ways, suddenly found themselves locked in a passionate kiss. Qin Yidong's cheeks burned. "My first kiss gone, just like that," she thought indignantly. "That jerk, give me back my first kiss." With a resounding splash, Qin Yidong flipped him over her shoulder, sending the crown prince crashing into the water basin. The shock of the cold water seemed to break the spell. Cries of "the crown prince is in the water" soon echoed throughout the estate. The next day, in the second prince's residence, a beautiful woman knelt silently on the floor. The second prince, looking upon the kneeling Yuan Zixian, spoke gravely. "This mission must succeed. Failure is not an option." "Understand, Your Highness," Yuan Zixian replied submissively. The second prince gave a wicked smile. "I want to see what tricks the crown prince is really playing." Back at the crown prince's estate, Nan Gongzi, upon hearing of the crown prince's watery mishap, erupted in laughter. Drugged, then dumped in the basin. Who would have thought the mighty crown prince would fall victim to such a fate? I thought the crown princess was harmless, but clearly I was mistaken. This is truly a tale for the ages. The crown prince, however, quickly steered the conversation back to business. "I asked you to handle a matter for me. It's time for an update." Outside the door, Qin Yidong and her maid lingered, hesitant to enter. They exchanged furtive glances, like conspirators about to embark on some clandestine mission. Just as she reached the crown prince's door, Nangongzi's boisterous laughter gave her pause. Peeking inside, she recognized the familiar figure. Qin Yidong was taken aback. The man inside was incredibly audacious, openly mocking the crown prince. Observing the familiar man, Qin Yidong couldn't help but think he seemed a bit unbalanced. The crown prince, surprisingly, didn't seem offended. Instead, he brought up a certain embarrassing incident involving Nangongzi and the pleasure house. Nangongzi paled instantly. "Please, Your Highness, don't tell my grandfather," he begged. The crown prince finally returned to the matter at hand, just as he was about to inquire about the progress. A noise from outside the door caught their attention. The crown prince whipped around. "Someone's eavesdropping. You insolent wretch. Show yourself." Gongzi strode towards the door. Realizing she'd been discovered, Qin Yidong panicked. Before she could flee, Gongzi flung the door open. Caught off guard, Qin Yidong stumbled gracelessly into the room, landing in a heap at the feet of the crown prince and Gongzi. The scene was undeniably awkward. Trying to regain her composure, Qin Yidong forced herself to appear calm. The crown prince, usually so composed, found himself intrigued by his wife's unexpected appearance. Of course, Qin Yidong couldn't very well admit she'd been eavesdropping, seeking revenge for the stolen kiss. So, he could only pretend to be concerned about the crown prince falling into the water and offer him a bowl of ginger soup. The crown prince hastily declined, remembering the last tonic soup that nearly cost him his life. After a period of training, the crown prince had become quite robust. He was also very worried that Qin Yidong, that mischievous girl, might lace his ginger soup with arsenic. Therefore, the crown prince, without a second thought, made up an excuse to send Qin Yidong away. But Qin Yidong wasn't so easily dismissed. Seeing his beloved consort preparing to thoughtfully examine him, the crown prince quickly dodged Qin Yidong's advance. Seeing the crown prince's resistance, Qin Yidong didn't press the matter. After all, she had been caught eavesdropping. Having finally seized this opportunity, she naturally wanted to make a quick escape. Late into the night, laughter erupted from the crown prince's study. Seeing the crown prince so tormented by Qin Yidong, Gongzi couldn't help but laugh at him again. The dignified crown prince of Chu made it look so foolish by a young girl. Outside, Qin Yidong was sneaking back to her quarters. After all the commotion, she had apparently forgotten the reason she had come: to avenge the theft of her first kiss. But since she couldn't remember, she decided not to dwell on it. The next morning arrived. Accompanied by the sounds of punches and kicks during her martial arts practice, Qin Yidong's skills had mostly recovered. Just then, her maid, Chuanxia, suddenly informed her that the nanny was summoning her to the main hall. The reason for the summons was the arrival of the previously mentioned #1 beauty of Qi, Miss Yuan. She had arrived at the crown prince's residence. Qin Yidong hurried back to her room to bathe and change. If it hadn't been mentioned today, she would have forgotten about this impending trouble. The legendary #1 beauty of Qi, Yuan Zishi, was supposedly the embroidery teacher the nanny had arranged. Yuan Zishi's arrival confirmed Qin Yidong's suspicion that the nanny would use this opportunity to make things difficult for her. Fortunately, Qin Yidong was no pushover. Having read countless palace intrigue novels in her past life, dealing with the nanny would be a piece of cake. The brave consort feared no challenge. The next moment, Qin Yidong steeled herself to face her fears. And Yuan Zishi was indeed a breathtaking beauty. The nanny then began to find fault with Qin Yidong. The two faced each other, and the more Qin Yidong observed her, the more charming the #1 beauty of Qi seemed. In comparison, Qin Yidong appeared rather unrefined. Because of this, the nanny demanded that Qin Yidong not only learn embroidery, but also proper etiquette from Yuan Zishi. Qin Yidong was deeply resistant, but at this point, to maintain appearances, she couldn't refuse outright. So, beginning that day, the crown princess began her arduous embroidery lessons. Qin Yidong could only hope that Miss Yuan wouldn't be driven to tears in the days to come. Late into the night, Yuan Zishi, as a daughter of a prestigious family, couldn't possibly have come to the crown prince's residence simply to teach needlework. Rumors had spread that the crown princess was ugly and dim-witted. Having met her, those rumors were now dispelled. Yuan Zishi's purpose was simple: to replace Qin Yidong and become the new crown princess by getting close to the crown prince. The night passed. Qin Yidong tossed and turned in her bed. From tomorrow onwards, she would lose her freedom. But even as the crown princess, she couldn't refuse the impending embroidery lessons. There was no escaping it. Yuan Zishi's embroidery skills were renowned throughout the kingdom. These lessons would undoubtedly attract a great deal of attention. It was all the crown prince's fault. If he hadn't forced her into marriage, she wouldn't have to endure this torment. Qin Yidong grumbled through gritted teeth. As if on cue, the moment she finished complaining, the crown prince's voice sounded from outside her door. Qin Yidong was in deep trouble now, cursed at by Li Di and caught red-handed by the crown prince. Given the feudal nature of this era, publicly insulting the crown prince was practically a death sentence by beheading. The crown prince, still alive and well, deliberately put on an air of righteous indignation. Quick-witted as ever, Qin Yidong immediately launched into a nonsensical plea. Your Highness, you don't understand our local dialect. Actually, where I come from, 1,000 cuts means I love you. The crown prince, though bewildered, seemed impressed. Meanwhile, a young eunuch standing nearby couldn't help but stifle a laugh. Faced with such a blatant lie, Qin Yidong simply nodded with unwavering conviction. It seems Madam's love for your Highness is truly profound. In that case, Madam also deserves 1,000 cuts. Seeing the crown prince willing to let it slide, Qin Yidong quickly changed the subject. The crown prince, who hadn't been seen in ages, had suddenly appeared. Qin Yidong couldn't fathom his intentions and desperately wanted him to leave. The crown prince then revealed his true reason for visiting. He had heard earlier about Nanny Nanyang telling Yuan Zixian to meet with Qin Yidong. Worried that Qin Yidong might have been bullied, he came to check on her. Qin Yidong was startled. The sly crown prince was actually concerned for her. There had to be a catch. Qin Yidong quickly got out of bed. Seeing his beloved consort suddenly acting so proactive, the crown prince assumed Qin Yidong had finally come around. But as they drew closer, Qin Yidong unleashed a swift kick at the unsuspecting prince, who was anticipating a tender moment. Seeing the kick hadn't deterred him completely, Qin Yidong resorted to physically pushing the future emperor out of the room. This girl is truly impossible. The crown prince's face darkened as the door slammed shut. However, seeing Qin Yidong's feistiness, the crown prince's worries began to dissipate. A girl this spirited wouldn't be easily bullied. Reassured, the crown prince decided to leave the inner palace. Qin Yidong was clumsily attempting to learn embroidery from Yuan Zixian. Despite Qin Yidong's repeated requests that Yuan Zixian give up on teaching her, Yuan Zixian persisted. Just then, footsteps approached. The crown prince quietly passed by their window. Seeing the crown prince, Yuan Zixian, who desperately desired the position of crown princess, trembled slightly and instantly became 800 times more gentle and considerate, eager to showcase her virtuous nature. Qin Yidong was exasperated. This young lady was just like Nanny Nanyang, stubbornly refusing to listen to reason. But appearances can be deceiving. Qin Yidong didn't yet understand the true intentions hidden within the heart of the most beautiful woman in the Qi kingdom, as both women harbor their own secret agendas. Qin Yidong pricked her finger with the embroidery needle. A sharp sting shot through her as blood welled up. Hearing the cry from within, the supposedly passing by crown prince instantly materialized, a sly smile playing on his handsome face. He strode into the room. The crown prince's sudden appearance startled Qin Yidong. The crown prince rushed to Qin Yidong's side, his face etched with concern. Qin Yidong was completely baffled. The next moment, the crown prince grabbed Qin Yidong's wrist. "Oh dear, my wife, how could you be so careless? Your finger is bleeding." Someone quickly summoned the imperial physician. Qin Yidong looked embarrassed. "It's just a small scratch. There's no need for a physician." But the crown prince was adamant. "A small wound is still a wound. Even though my dear isn't Lin Daiyu, what if you lose too much blood and something happens?" This display of affection did not go unnoticed by Yuan Zixian, who yearned to be the crown princess. Seeing Qin Yidong receiving such attention, jealousy flared within her. She took out a silver needle and jabbed her own finger, letting out a soft, pitiful cry. Qin Yidong, seeing Yuan Zixian deliberately injure herself, was furious. But the next moment, she was taken aback by Yuan Zixian's delicate, vulnerable demeanor. Everyone stared, dumbfounded. Yuan Zixian was truly a beauty, a delicate white lotus. Yet, inexplicably, the crown prince showed her no attention. Instead, he seemed far more concerned about Qin Yidong's injured finger. A short while later, the imperial physician hurried in. As a physician, he possessed considerable professional integrity. The crown prince, tugging Qin Yidong along, presented her for examination. The moment the physician saw the extent of Qin Yidong's injury, he was utterly shocked. Such a severe wound. Fortunately, she had sought treatment promptly. Any later, and the wound would have healed itself. Amidst this comical scene, Yuan Zixian's face turned a sickly green. Suddenly, her maid noticed something amiss. Yuan Zixian looked down at her pricked finger. A gush of blood spurted forth. "Oh my heavens," she cried. "It was just a needle prick. How can there be so much blood?" The cries of "Miss Yuan has fainted from blood loss" soon echoed throughout the crown prince's residence. Time passed. Yuan Zixian lay injured in bed. Her nanny, having heard the news, rushed in and anxiously examined her wound. Yuan Zixian feigned nonchalance. After all, she had deliberately brought this upon herself. Even if she suffered excessive blood loss, she couldn't blame anyone else. Her nanny, seemingly unmoved by her act, abruptly changed her demeanor upon seeing Yuan Zixian's disregard. She sternly instructed Yuan Zixian to take better care of Qin Yidong in the future. However, the nanny wasn't entirely heartless. She prepared some blood-enriching tonic soups for Yuan Zixian to aid her recovery. As soon as her nanny left, Yuan Zixian eagerly questioned her maid. "While I was unconscious, did the crown prince carry me back to my room?" The maid quickly shook her head. The crown prince hadn't shown much concern for Yuan Zixian's injury. All his attention had been focused on Qin Yidong. He had even seemingly ignored the famed beauty's fainting spell. Yuan Zixian resolved to find a way to drive a wedge between the crown prince and his wife. As night fell, Qin Yidong was being sternly lectured by her personal maid. As the crown princess, "How dare you address his highness by his name? That's a grave offense." Qin Yidong remained indifferent. She almost wished the crown prince would just chop off her head. The next moment, Qin Yidong stormed into the crown prince's room to confront him. Unfazed, the crown prince responded, "I was merely concerned about my wife today. Is that a crime?" Qin Yidong grew increasingly irritated. "It was just a bruised finger. It's not like you needed to wrap it up like a dumpling. Besides, Liang Xian, that sly fox, was deeply calculating. Why would he suddenly show such concern out of the blue? Such strange behavior. He definitely had ulterior motives." The crown prince put on a look of virtue. Wei Chu, feeling wronged. "I kindly showed concern for you, and this is how I'm repaid? A woman's heart is truly unfathomable." Qin Yidong scowled. The crown prince's behavior was so suspicious. He must have some other request. After all, no good deed goes unpunished. If you have something to ask, just say it. If I can help, I will. The crown prince pressed his lips together, then burst into laughter. Qin Yidong was taken aback. He reached out and affectionately ruffled her hair. "You're so cute." As the crown prince, second only to the emperor, "Do you think I need your help with anything? Or are you perhaps offering yourself to me?" Looking at the handsome man before her, Qin Yidong's face flushed. "You idiot, what are you thinking? I didn't mean anything like that." The two bantered back and forth without reservation. Their maid watched on, amused. The next day, Qin Yidong practiced embroidery, but her mind was preoccupied. All she could think about was the crown prince's affectionate expression from the previous day. In all her life, it was the first time a man had patted her head. That infuriating crown prince. However, he was also the first man to call her cute. Qin Yidong's thoughts began to wander. Her unusual behavior caught the attention of Yuan Zixian. He mistakenly thought Qin Yidong felt unwell and immediately prepared a call for a physician. Qin Yidong quickly declined with a smile. The two sisters, Yuan Zixian and her accomplice, appeared respectful, but then Yuan Zixian abruptly changed the subject. Returning to the crown prince's residence, Yuan Zixian had meticulously prepared a gift for Qin Yidong. A servant girl carried a silk robe into the room. It turned out that Yuan Zixian had personally sewn the garment for Qin Yidong. Although the robe wasn't as luxurious as those found in the finest shops, it was made by the hand of the renowned beauty, making it quite valuable. Qin Yidong regarded the gift with suspicion. Despite Yuan Zixian's amiable demeanor, Qin Yidong couldn't forget her manipulative, innocent act from the previous day. She sensed something was amiss with the robe. Seeing Qin Yidong's hesitation to accept the gift, Yuan Zixian put on her saccharine, manipulative facade once more. Qin Yidong decided to play along. "Such exquisite workmanship. I almost feel too unworthy to wear it." Yuan Zixian, with a coquettish smile, urged Qin Yidong to try on the new robe. This eagerness only deepened Qin Yidong's suspicions. However, to avoid alerting Yuan Zixian, she pretended to comply. She needed a way to get out of this situation. Hiding behind a screen, Qin Yidong looked around frantically. Suddenly, an idea struck her. She grabbed a pair of scissors from the table and began to viciously tear at the suspicious robe. On the other side of the screen, Yuan Zixian and her servant, believing their scheme was about to succeed, revealed their sinister expressions. The robe had been laced with a potent poison by Yuan Zixian. Merely wearing it would cause irreversible damage to the wearer's appearance. If Qin Yidong's face were ruined, the position of crown princess would be vacant. Suddenly, a scream echoed from behind the screen. The master and servant, thrilled, assumed the poison had taken effect. They rushed to Qin Yidong's side, feigning concern. But strangely, Qin Yidong was unharmed. She even held up the tattered robe, her voice filled with indignation. What kind of shoddy robe did you make for me? Not only does it not fit, but it's also full of holes. Yuan Zixian was aghast. She had meticulously crafted the robe. How could this have happened? Seizing the opportunity, Qin Yidong accused Yuan Zixian of deliberately humiliating her by giving her a ruined robe, claiming it was out of spite for having to teach her embroidery skills. Yuan Zixian stammered, trying to explain. Just then, hurried footsteps approached. The crown prince passed by their window once again. Panic seized Yuan Zixian. In a flash of inspiration, she dramatically collapsed, feigning unconsciousness. The servant girl beside her was bewildered. What sort of performance was this? One moment, Yuan Zixian was putting on a convincing act, and the next she was sprawled on the floor. Qin Yidong was equally perplexed. Then, the seasoned actress subtly opened her eyes and gestured to her servant. The servant girl instantly understood. She turned and darted out the door, running straight to the crown prince to tearfully recount a fabricated story, placing all the blame squarely on Qin Yidong. The crown prince, hearing the news, rushed over, his concern evident. Qin Yidong was startled to see him. With Yuan Zixian still feigning unconsciousness, Qin Yidong finally understood the reason behind her theatrics. The timing seemed almost too perfect. But ironically, the crown prince hadn't even glanced at Yuan Zixian. He had misheard the servant's hurried explanation and assumed Qin Yidong was the one who had collapsed. He was taken aback to find Yuan Zixian unconscious instead. Yuan Zixian's servant quickly reiterated her fabricated account. The crown prince, finally realizing Yuan Zixian was still on the floor, immediately ordered Zhu Yijing to summon a physician. Meanwhile, the servant continued to malign Qin Yidong, exaggerating and twisting the events between Qin Yidong and Yuan Zixian, and vehemently insisting that Qin Yidong was responsible for Yuan Zixian's condition. Qin Yidong was speechless. She had been the victim of a poisoning attempt, yet she was now being accused of harming Yuan Zixian. Hearing this, the crown prince didn't panic. He didn't rush to blame Qin Yidong. In his mind, Yuan Zixi was so fragile she'd faint at the prick of a needle. He also didn't believe she was as robust and strong as the maid claimed. Qin Yidong secretly rejoiced. The crown prince was surprisingly quick-witted, instantly transforming into a silver-tongued devil, his words both logical and persuasive. He was rather charming like this. The crown prince, in turn, scolded Yuan Zixi's maid, warning her that he wouldn't be lenient if she dared slander the crown princess again. Then, turning to Qin Yidong, he began discussing dinner plans. Qin Yidong was utterly embarrassed. Who was this sudden display of affection for? Meanwhile, Yuan Zixi was still sprawled unconscious on the floor. To escape the prince's unexpected invitation, Qin Yidong quickly offered to carry Yuan Zixi back to her room. Both the prince and the maid were left speechless. Hearing this, Yuan Zixi's eyes fluttered open. If she had to endure any intimate contact with this woman, she'd rather die in the crown prince's residence. In the next moment, Yuan Zixi demonstrated a true medical miracle. Waking up, Yuan Zixi pretended nothing had happened. However, her performance was overly dramatic, hardly worthy of her reputation for scheming. But did you think Yuan Zixi's performance would end there? Seeing the crown prince standing before her, the recently revived Yuan Zixi suddenly felt dizzy again. With a lurch, she prepared to collapse into the crown prince's arms. Any physical contact with him would surely drive a wedge between Qin Yidong and the prince. But Yuan Zixi hadn't anticipated the prince's agility. With a swift sidestep, he dodged her dramatic swoon, sending the little schemer tumbling to the ground. Seeing Yuan Zixi had recovered, the prince decided against summoning a physician. He grabbed Qin Yidong's hand, his brow furrowed, eager to escape the scene. Yuan Zixi's face darkened. Her plan had failed again. She would have to launch an even fiercer attack on Qin Yidong. Elsewhere, the crown prince, Liang Xian, hurriedly pulled Qin Yidong to the riverside. He gazed at his beloved concubine, making Qin Yidong blush. He was still bothered by the recent events. He'd almost embraced Yuan Zixi, and he worried Qin Yidong might be angry. But Qin Yidong appeared unconcerned. They drew closer, until at the last moment, Qin Yidong averted her gaze. This seemingly innocent act caused the prince to stumble, his foot slipping. Whether intentional or not, He grabbed Qin Yidong's braid as he fell. They tumbled together, plunging into the small river with a splash. Two large splashes disrupted the calm water. A nearby maid screamed for help. After being fished out, Qin Yidong sneezed repeatedly in her room. That wretched crown prince. Not only did he fall in, but he dragged her down with him. Seeing her mistress catch a cold, Chuanxia hurried to bring her medicine. But Qin Yidong brushed it off, claiming a little dip in the river was nothing. Compared to her strong, well-exercised body, that wretched Liang Xian was far more likely to get sick. After all, the poor crown prince had already fallen into the water several times in just a few days. Hearing Qin Yidong address the crown prince by his name again, Chuanxia quickly urged her mistress to break this dangerous habit. Just then, Yuan Zixi's voice sounded from outside. The scheming woman arrived, feigning concern, and inquiring about Qin Yidong's health. To demonstrate her care for the crown princess, the kind-hearted Yuan Zixi even brought 2 types of medicine, specifically for treating colds. In these 2 doses of medicine, Yuan Zixi, the conniving concubine, purred, have been certified by the royal physician. Just 1 dose, and any cold will vanish instantly. With that, she promptly ordered Chuanxia, the crown princess's personal maid, to brew the medicine and administer it to Qin Yidong. Bound by propriety, Chuanxia had little choice but to obey. However, her loyalty remained firmly with Qin Yidong, the crown princess. Yuan Zixi's casual commandeering of the crown princess's servant did not sit well with Qin Yidong. Seeing Qin Yidong about to accept the concoction, Yuan Zixi wasted no further breath. She turned to take her leave. The 2 doses of medicine she'd gifted containing far more than simple herbs. The ingredients were insidious, expertly concealed, their poisonous nature untraceable. A venomous smile, cold and reptilian, flickered across Yuan Zixi's face. Meanwhile, the quick-witted Chuanxia, watching the scheming concubine depart, emerged from the shadows. She had not, in fact, brewed the poisonous medicine as instructed. Qin Yidong, turning back, ordered Chuanxia to discard the concoction. Obediently, Chuanxia complied, though she remained unaware of the danger lurking within the seemingly innocuous package. The revelation of the poison sent a wave of shock through Chuanxia, her face paling. Such unsolicited kindness could only harbor ill intentions. Yuan Zixi, viewing Qin Yidong as a rival for the crown prince's affections, would hardly offer genuine aid. In a courtyard, the maids, Ahe and Danxin, worried their mistress's scheme might lead to a fatality within the crown prince's residence. Yuan Zixi, however, remained confident. The medicine wouldn't be lethal, though its effects would be potent. 2 rats, having ingested the potion, became violently agitated. The ever-astute Qin Yidong had wisely resorted to testing the concoction on the small creatures. Judging by the current situation, Yuan Zixi posed a significant threat if left unchecked. Yet, despite her blatant machinations, the crown prince had not expelled her from the residence. Qin Yidong pondered the prince's motives. Since the crown prince had made no move, Qin Yidong decided to observe further, curious to see what Yuan Zixi would attempt next. Time passed swiftly. While taking her daily run in the gardens, Qin Yidong encountered the scheming concubine. Hoping to lure Yuan Zixi into revealing her true intentions, Qin Yidong approached, expressing gratitude for the medicine. Observing Qin Yidong's apparent well-being, Yuan Zixi feigned politeness, inwardly seething with frustration. Had something gone wrong with her plan? She resolved to investigate immediately. Back in her chambers, Yuan Zixi, her heart filled with venomous suspicion, summoned her personal maid. She commanded Ahe to consume the medicine. If Ahe showed no reaction, then the medicine must have been tampered with. If there was no effect, it could only mean Qin Yidong had not taken the poison at all. Ahe's face darkened. Yuan Zixi fell into deep thought, a chilling silence descending upon the room. Elsewhere, Qin Yidong, mid-run, was startled by a sudden scream. It sounded like Yuan Zixi. Though reluctant to interfere, Qin Yidong recognized the potential for disaster. Yuan Zixi was, after all, a guest in the residence. Deciding to involve the crown prince, Qin Yidong set off to find him. Together, they would investigate. A horrifying scene awaited them. And now resembling a crazed zombie, had pinned her mistress to the ground, her hands tightening around Yuan Zixi's throat. Just as he was about to deliver the fatal blow, Qin Dong and the Crown Prince arrived. Seizing the opportunity, Yuan Zishi, with a surge of adrenaline, broke free and flung herself at the Crown Prince. Right in front of Qin Dong, she clung to the Crown Prince, her embrace desperate. Qin Dong was stunned by Yuan Zishi's dramatic display. Seeing her prey escape, he lunged towards Yuan Zishi once more. But Zhu Ying, the Crown Prince's ever-vigilant unit guard, reacted swiftly. With a single, powerful strike, he knocked He unconscious. The immediate danger was averted. Yet Yuan Zishi, shameless as ever, remained clinging to the Crown Prince. He's furious assault just now left a massive palm print on her. And at this very moment, Qin Dong, the Crown Princess, seemed to have a lapse in judgment. She astonishingly asked the Crown Prince to carry Yuan Zixian back to her room to rest. Dong, do you know what you're saying? The Crown Prince asked repeatedly, seeking confirmation. Qin Dong remained resolute. This woman's manipulative nature was truly unfathomable. Despite this, the Crown Prince continued to demur. But Qin Dong wasn't being unreasonable. Her request for the prince to carry Yuan Zixian was a calculated move. She planned to use this opportunity to deal with this play-acting White Lotus. By making the request herself, the rest depended on the Crown Prince's understanding. The Crown Prince again sought confirmation of her seemingly absurd request. Qin Dong expressed complete agreement, emphasizing the urgency of saving Yuan Zixian and urging the prince to disregard her own feelings. With a cold snort, the Crown Prince scooped up Yuan Zixian right in front of his beloved wife. Qin Dong secretly rejoiced at this sight, while Chuanxia, her maid, fretted anxiously. The next day arrived. After Yuan Zixian's theatrics the previous day, a rare moment of peace settled over the Crown Prince's residence. However, there was troubling news. Liang Xian, always devoted to the Crown Princess, had spent the entire day in Yuan Zixian's room. This was entirely out of character for the Crown Prince. Qin Dong couldn't help but suspect something was amiss. Could they have developed feelings for each other? Had the Crown Prince genuinely fallen for Yuan Zixian? No, the Crown Prince would never do such a thing. After all, Yuan Zixian's manipulative nature was glaringly obvious. Even if Liang Xian didn't love her, he would never get involved with someone like that. Determined to uncover the truth, Qin Dong decided to investigate personally. Seeing the Crown Princess's urgency, Chuanxia felt a surge of excitement, believing her mistress had finally come to her senses. They hurried to Yuan Zixian's room. The Crown Prince and Yuan Zixian were engaged in a tender embrace. Witnessing this scene, mistress and maid froze in place, utterly stunned. Never one to miss an opportunity, Yuan Zixian feigned concern for the Crown Prince's marriage while secretly relishing the rift she was creating. Qin Dong felt a wave of nausea. She had prepared a tonic for Yuan Zixian, intending to deliver it personally, but now she had lost all interest. After a brief instruction to Chuanxia, she quickly departed. Yuan Zixian smirked, watching her go. 3 days later, Qin Dong sat by the river, sighing deeply. Since that day, the Crown Prince had become a different person, showering Yuan Zixian with affection while treating her with icy indifference. How could Liang Xian, with his intelligence, fall for such a manipulative woman? Qin Dong's heart was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. It was she who had encouraged Liang Xian to get close to Yuan Zixian. Yet now, she felt a deep unease. Was she truly? Just as Qin Dong was lost in her troubled thoughts, Yuan Zixian's voice broke through her reverie. Yuan Zixian's first act was to flaunt the meticulous care the Crown Prince had shown her these past few days. After all, even the Crown Princess hadn't received such devoted attention from the Crown Prince. Qin Dong responded with a sardonic smile. It's a pity Miss Yuan isn't the Crown Princess. Instead of being offended, Yuan Zixian met her taunt with open defiance. How much longer do you think you'll hold on to that title? With Yuan Zixian's open provocation, Qin Dong abandoned all pretense of politeness. If Yuan Zixian weren't a guest, the Crown Prince wouldn't give her a second glance. But Yuan Zixian simply scoffed. So what if you're the Crown Princess? These past few days, hasn't the Crown Prince treated you with utter coldness? Qin Dong felt a sharp pang of pain. Yuan Zixian, growing bolder, continued her attack. She confessed to tampering with Qin Dong's clothes and threatened to reveal the incident where Qin Dong had rendered her unconscious. Qin Dong remained unfazed. Unbeknownst to them, the crown prince was observing their confrontation from a distance. Yuan Zixian, seeing her tactics failing, resorted to a new low, threatening Qin Yidong's father. Qin Yidong erupted in fury. With Yuan Zixian's family's influence, false accusations could ruin her father's career. She grabbed Yuan Zixian by the collar, her rage overflowing. She could tolerate Yuan Zixian's scheming within the residence, even insults directed at herself, but she would never allow this vile woman to target her family. From afar, the crown prince silently watched the two women locked in their bitter feud, their voices rising in a crescendo of anger. Yuan Zixian shoved Qin Yidong away. This villain, in an attempt to frame Qin Yidong, deliberately let her feet slip and fell towards the pond beside them. But her cries for help led those around them to believe that Qin Yidong had pushed her. Qin Yidong, witnessing this, was momentarily stunned. The crown prince, watching from afar, reacted with alarm and immediately ordered someone to rescue her. Yuan Zixian thrashed in the water, screaming for help. The crown prince rushed to Qin Yidong, and she expected, given his intelligence, that he would quickly discern the truth. Instead, to her fury, he immediately accused her of wrongdoing. Qin Yidong's anger flared. The crown prince insisted that Qin Yidong had deliberately pushed Yuan Zixian into the pond. This was the final straw. In front of everyone, Qin Yidong pointed at the crown prince's nose and unleashed a torrent of furious words. Yuan Zixian, seeing the conflict erupt between them, feigned innocence and stepped forward to mediate, even speaking up in Qin Yidong's defense. But the crown prince, as heir to the throne, could hardly bear such public humiliation. His face burned with rage. Yuan Zixian, with a look of detached concern, subtly fanned the flames of their argument. Finally, Qin Yidong could no longer contain her fury. Fine. You say I pushed this wretch into the pond. Just now, I didn't lay a finger on her. But since you insist, it seems I have no choice. With a loud splash, just as Yuan Zixian was being pulled from the water, Qin Yidong grabbed her and, with a powerful over-the-shoulder throw, tossed her back in. Turning to glare at the crown prince, she seethed, I wasn't guilty before, but thanks to you, I am now. I thank your ancestors 8 generations back. You've made me a criminal. Qin Yidong seized the crown prince by the shoulders and, with another over-the-shoulder throw, threw him into the pond as well, to the astonishment of the onlookers. The crown prince was utterly humiliated. Qin Yidong's face remained a mask of fury. She had thought Liang Xian, the crown prince, was intelligent enough to see through Yuan Zixian's scheming, but he was clearly blinded by her beauty. Not only that, but he had sided with an outsider against his own wife. It was Yuan Zixian who was dangerous, using her family's influence to harm her father. Yet the crown prince had chosen to believe her lies. Hearing this, the crown prince was taken aback. Yuan Zixian, fearing his misunderstanding, quickly offered an explanation. She downplayed her family's power, portraying them as insignificant, even though just moments ago, when she first fell in, she had acted the part of a helpless damsel. Now, thrown back into the water, she remained remarkably composed. The crown prince was quickly fished out of the pond. Seeing Qin Yidong about to leave, he called out to stop her. Qin Yidong's face darkened. She half expected him to order her execution. The crown prince sighed inwardly. Despite his outward anger, he still cared for Qin Yidong. He decided on a small punishment. Qin Yidong would be confined to her quarters, away from the public eye, giving them both time to cool down. Qin Yidong stormed off. To save face for the Yuan family, the crown prince publicly refrained from reprimanding Yuan Zixian. After the commotion died down, the crown prince was left alone with his troubled thoughts. The incident had been unexpected. He had intended to stage a drama with Qin Yidong, but things had spiraled out of control. Now, to appease the gossiping court, he had been forced to punish her. Elsewhere, an assassin had carried out the crown prince's earlier instructions. Hearing the report, the crown prince smiled. However, his next words left the assassin dumbfounded. To ensure Qin Yidong's safety, the crown prince had decided to assign the assassin as her bodyguard. The assassin vehemently protested. Killing was far preferable to babysitting the crown princess. The next day, Qin Yidong, confined to her room, was startled awake by a commotion. After yesterday's events, the Empress Dowager had demanded the crown prince divorce his wife. Upon hearing this, Qin Yidong was overjoyed. All the commotion she deliberately caused had finally led to this day, the day of her divorce. Xuanxia, however, was deeply worried. Yesterday's incident had caused quite a stir, and countless people in the manor were gossiping behind Qin Yidong's back. Therefore, Chunxia urged Qin Yidong to yield and avoid being divorced. Hearing this, Qin Yidong silently rose. Overcome with joyful anticipation, Chunxia mistakenly believed Qin Yidong had agreed to apologize to the crown prince. Meanwhile, the crown prince, upon hearing that his beloved consort was coming to apologize, was beyond Jidong. This was practically unheard of. He suspected she wasn't coming to apologize at all, but rather to cause him more grief. Just then a knock echoed. So, even this woman had moments of trepidation. Qin Yidong's expression was solemn. The servant girl, praying silently that her mistress wouldn't be divorced, stood anxiously by. The crown prince watched Qin Yidong's performance intently. Qin Yidong extended her hand. Seeing his beloved consort seemingly yielding, the crown prince assumed she wanted to shake hands and make peace. A dramatic scene unfolded. With a slight change in her expression, Qin Yidong addressed the crown prince. "Your Highness, I am not extending my hand for a handshake. I am here for my divorce papers." Everyone was stunned. The crown prince looked panicked. Had this girl gone mad? She had come all this way just to demand a divorce. The crown prince's composure completely shattered. He roared at Qin Yidong. Before, it was just an act, even if his mother ordered it. How could he bear to divorce her? Seeing the crown prince hesitate, Qin Yidong grew impatient. The heavy atmosphere suffocated the servant girl and the guards. The crown prince, his face dark, dragged Qin Yidong out. Originally, Qin Yidong was only confined for 3 days. Her demand for a divorce had escalated her punishment to half a month. She was thrown out of the room. Furious, Qin Yidong kicked the crown prince's study door. But she seemed to have forgotten her restored superhuman strength. With just a few kicks, the door collapsed. The crown prince was enraged, but he couldn't bring himself to be angry with his beloved consort, so he vented his fury on his guards. The guards were tearful. Why were they always the ones who suffered? Meanwhile, Yuan Zishi and her servant were delighted to hear about Qin Yidong's latest escapade. Qin Yidong's days were surely numbered. She had only been married for a few days and had already turned the crown prince's manor upside down. Qin Yidong didn't deserve to be the crown princess. Yuan Zishi decided to fan the flames. It just so happened that Qin Yidong had sent her some tonic a few days prior, and it was time to send Qin Yidong to her doom. As the saying goes, a woman's downfall can happen in an instant. Because she had broken the door to the crown prince's study, Qin Yidong was punished again by the Empress Dowager. She was confined and ordered to copy hundreds of scriptures every day. The Empress Dowager claimed it was to purify Qin Yidong and the crown prince's souls. But in reality, it was excruciating torture. Unable to defy the Empress Dowager, the poor Qin Yidong had no choice but to finish copying the remaining scriptures. Just then, Chunxia rushed in. In a single day, another major incident had occurred in the crown prince's manor. Overnight, Yuan Zishi had been poisoned. Her servant insisted that her mistress had been poisoned by the tonic Qin Yidong had sent them a few days prior. Qin Yidong was furious. That conniving woman dared to frame her. I've been patient again and again and again. I can't believe that bastard dared to get in my face like that. Qin Yidong fumed, rising to her feet in anger. Just as she stepped out the door, she collided head-on with the crown prince. Qin Yidong's emotions were in turmoil. Had the crown prince come to arrest her? Seeing her distressed expression, the crown prince's heart twisted with anxiety. But Qin Yidong only misinterpreted his presence further. She stormed out of the residence, intending to turn herself into the authorities. The crown prince, stunned, quickly intercepted the distraught young woman. Although Yuan Zishi was poisoned, and, on the surface, it did seem to implicate Qin Yidong, and Yuan Zishi had repeatedly complained to him. The crown prince didn't necessarily believe Yuan Zishi's accusations. Seeing that the crown prince remained rational, Qin Yidong was surprised. So he hadn't brought his entourage with such a fierce air to arrest her, but to protect her from harm. In the crown prince's eyes, there was no Yuan Zishi at all. There was only his beloved crown princess, and her name was Qin Yidong. Qin Yidong blushed. He had just been accusing her relentlessly. If he truly cared for Yuan Zishi, why wouldn't he just? That concubine was a complete wretch. Seeing Qin Yidong on the verge of tears, the crown prince pulled her into his arms. Silly girl, she was so gullible. He had only been acting, and she had taken it all to heart. He the crown prince of a foreign land, had been thrown into a pond in public, and the culprit had only received a 3-day punishment. How could she not see his intentions? She kept telling him to go find other women, so naturally, he had to retaliate a little. It was all a misunderstanding, a scheme he had devised to uncover the truth. This silly girl, Chin Dong, had actually damaged their relationship over someone as insignificant as Yuan Zishi. She really owed him some compensation. Meanwhile, Yuan Zishi, upon hearing the news of the crown prince and princess's reconciliation, despite having just been poisoned, leaped up to confront the crown prince. But she was immediately stopped by her maids. Yuan Zishi was confused. The crown prince sent her a message through the maids, which struck the self-proclaimed innocent Yuan Zishi like a bolt from the blue. The second prince was waiting for her at the Yuan residence. The crown prince had discovered her collusion with the second prince. Meanwhile, the crown prince was in high spirits. Chin Dong, seeing the crown prince brazenly occupying her room, tried to kick him out. But the next moment, the roguish crown prince, without warning, embraced the stunned young woman. Chin Dong's face flushed crimson. But they were husband and wife, and the crown prince's health had greatly improved recently. So, the crown prince made a small request of his beloved. It was time to consummate their marriage. He had barely finished speaking when his subordinates barged into the room, oblivious to the mood. Yuan Zishi had been sent back to the Yuan family. Chin Dong was astonished. It seemed he had truly intended for Yuan Zishi to remain in the crown prince's residence as a concubine. However, the crown prince didn't want Chin Dong involved in the complexities of the situation. Moreover, the Yuan family's daughter was favored in the palace. After this confrontation, Chin Dong was likely to face further trouble, especially from the Empress Dowager, who might very well target her. If she wanted to remain safe, Chin Dong would have to cling tightly to the crown prince. With that, Chin Dong embraced the crown prince before her. Elsewhere, Yuan Zishi returned to her family home as instructed by the crown prince. She hurried out of the carriage, expecting to find the second prince waiting for her. Instead, she was met by her older brother. The second prince's supposed visit had been a ruse, a warning from the crown prince. Yuan Zishi immediately understood. Elsewhere, the second prince, having heard of the events at the crown prince's residence, he couldn't help but marvel at his elder brother's ingenuity. The crown prince also issued a warning to the second prince. He had a firm grasp on the second prince's vulnerabilities within the palace. All of this was for the sake of his newlywed crown princess. Having witnessed all of this, the second prince became intensely curious about his new sister-in-law. It just so happened that a flower viewing banquet would be held in the palace in 3 days. He saw this as an opportunity to properly meet the newest member of the crown prince's household. Chin Dong, upon hearing that the flower viewing banquet would be held in 3 days, felt a surge of apprehension. His survival instinct screamed. This wasn't simply a flower viewing banquet. It was a blatant hangmen banquet, a trap laid bare. Seeing his beloved consort's resistance, the crown prince reassured her, using his own status as a shield. With him present, no one in the palace would dare lay a finger on Chin Dong. Despite this, Chin Dong remained deeply uneasy. "What have I done to deserve such a miserable fate lately?" she lamented. Time flew by, and the day of the banquet arrived. No matter how much she tried to reassure herself, Chin Dong couldn't shake the tension as she entered the grand hall. After all, she was about to face the entire court's concubines and the esteemed Empress Dowager. Just as her anxiety peaked, a gentle hand clasped hers firmly. The crown prince leaned down, whispering soothing words that gradually calmed Chin Dong's racing heart. Then, the eunuch announced the Empress Dowager's arrival. As the crown princess, Chin Dong was naturally the first to step forward and offer her respects. A solemn air filled the vast hall. But to Chin Dong's surprise, Yuan Zixian was also present at the flower viewing banquet. The crown prince and princess knelt to greet the Empress Dowager. This was the Empress Dowager's first encounter with Chin Dong since her marriage. The crown prince had shielded her for so long. Otherwise, she would have been summoned to the palace much earlier. The Empress Dowager then instructed Chin Dong to raise her head. Fortunately, she didn't make things difficult for her. She merely complimented Qin Yidong's attractive features before dismissing her back to her seat. However, matters weren't so simple. While the Empress Dowager hadn't been overly harsh, Yuan Zixian, standing beside her, seized the opportunity to fan the flames. After all, Qin Yidong had caused quite a stir during the consort selection. Fortunately, the Crown Prince intervened on Qin Yidong's behalf. Their loving display helped ease the tension in the air. But Yuan Zixian was relentless. Right in front of the Empress Dowager, she demanded that Qin Yidong perform a public display of brick-breaking with her bare hands. The Crown Prince finally had enough. I hear Miss Yuan is skilled in all the arts. Perhaps Miss Yuan would like to demonstrate her talents first. Hearing the Crown Prince's invitation, Yuan Zixian's spirits soared. She was determined to reclaim the position of Crown Princess. An awkward silence fell over the hall. With the Crown Prince's prompting, Yuan Zixian, before all the assembled concubines, began to dance. Her alluring movements and seductive glances were clearly directed at the Crown Prince, a blatant provocation. With such a captivating performance, Yuan Zixian undoubtedly stole the show. Yet, the Crown Prince, in front of everyone, declared that her dance was only slightly better than that of a courtesan. This remark completely shattered Yuan Zixian's composure. The successive verbal blows left her utterly humiliated. Thankfully, the Empress Dowager intervened, sparing Yuan Zixian further embarrassment. The Crown Prince's actions served as a clear message to Yuan Zixian. Qin Yidong was someone she should never cross. The atmosphere calmed slightly, perhaps to maintain balance. The Empress Dowager expressed her desire to see Qin Yidong's talents as well. This piqued the Crown Prince's interest. He declared that his beloved consort was highly accomplished, skilled in all the arts, including music and singing. Qin Yidong now found herself in the spotlight. The Empress Dowager, eager to witness her granddaughter-in-law's talents, awaited her performance. Left with no other choice, Qin Yidong reluctantly agreed. The onlookers watched with anticipation as Qin Yidong, with focused concentration, lifted his ridiculously long legs and began to perform his signature flying ladder routine for the Empress Dowager. A flurry of combat moves, grappling techniques, and acrobatic flips ensued, a dazzling display that left the Empress Dowager's face ashen. Such a performance had never been witnessed in the entire history of the Imperial Palace. The Empress Dowager was deeply offended. Yuan Zixian, observing the scene, couldn't resist twisting the knife, openly mocking Qin Yidong. But Qin Yidong wasn't about to let this little viper get the best of him. "There are countless forms of dance in the world," he retorted, "each with its own unique beauty. Just because you haven't seen it doesn't mean it's not art. If this is cause for ridicule," he continued, "it only shows how narrow-minded Miss Yuan is. With such limited experience, how dare you criticize others so publicly?" The air crackled with tension once more. The Empress Dowager hastily ordered Qin Yidong to withdraw. Although he hadn't been entirely humiliated, his dance was certainly less graceful than the accepted norm. The Crown Prince, Liang Xian, his motives unclear, seeing the Empress Dowager's fixation on Qin Yidong's talents, made a sudden proposal. He suggested that Qin Yidong remain in the palace to study dance under the Empress Dowager's tutelage. Qin Yidong's brow furrowed at the suggestion. The Empress Dowager, however, was delighted with the idea. She was often lonely in the palace, and having a granddaughter-in-law to keep her company would certainly make life more interesting. Seeing Qin Yidong once again in favor, Yuan Zixian's face contorted with rage. Qin Yidong, however, was in tears at the prospect of being left alone in the palace. Liang Xian, seeing her distress, moved to comfort her. Just then, a cheer erupted, interrupting the moment. The second prince had arrived. He was a beloved figure throughout the palace and even the court. His mother, the current head consort, held immense power within the royal family, her influence even surpassing that of Liang Xian, the crown prince. As they spoke, this most favored prince walked directly towards Qin Yidong and Liang Xian. "So this is the legendary brick-smashing crown princess," he remarked. Sensing his brother's hostility, Liang Xian quickly countered. "If you've come to see brick-smashing, second brother, I'm afraid you've chosen a bad day. My wife is not a circus monkey for your amusement." The second prince's expression remained unchanged as he observed the seemingly affectionate couple before him. They were quite different from the description given by Liu Yan. After all, this was the crown princess who had personally thrown her beloved husband into a river. She seemed even more intriguing than he had imagined. With that thought, the second prince turned and walked away. Qin Yidong noticed the undisguised dislike and resentment Liang Xian held for his younger brother. The crown prince didn't elaborate on their complicated history. His priority was ensuring Qin Yidong's survival within the palace walls. It was like throwing a lamb to the wolves. As night fell, Qin Yidong, forcibly confined to the palace, cursed Liang Xian's reckless decision. How could he, that scoundrel, send his wife into the lion's den? It was a blatant vulnerability, leaving her at the mercy of those with malicious intent, surrounded by hidden dangers. Qin Yidong's every thought was consumed with survival. A short while later, Chunxia stormed back into the room, furious. "The servants in this palace are heartless," she exclaimed. She had simply asked for some hot water and had been met with a barrage of insults. They clearly had no respect for the crown princess. Qin Yidong fell into deep thought. There had to be more to it than met the eye. Late that night, Yuan Zixin knelt on the floor, her head bowed. Her mission to infiltrate the crown prince's residence had failed, and now she had given another advantage to her enemies. She had effectively placed the lives of her entire family, hundreds of people, in the hands of the second prince. The plot to seize power was unfolding. If the second prince lost to the crown prince, numerous court officials, including Yuan Zixin's entire family, would pay the price with their lives. To ensure the smooth execution of his plan, the second prince tossed a vial of unknown liquid onto the ground, ordering Yuan Zixi to make sure Qin Yidong ingested it. Yuan Zixi's heart stirred with a cunning idea. Since the crown princess held such significance for Liang Xian, she would transform her into a pawn for the second prince. Once Qin Yidong consumed the mind-controlling poison, Dugua, she would become a puppet under the second prince's command. The second prince couldn't help but smile in anticipation at the thought of Liang Xian being betrayed by the woman he loved most. Early the next morning, Qin Yidong hurriedly stopped a passing palace maid. However, the maid seemed terrified of her and avoided her at all costs. After some persuasion, the maid finally agreed to speak with Qin Yidong. It turned out the current situation within the palace had completely shifted in favor of the second prince. Furthermore, due to the crown prince's background, he was not favored within the inner palace. Therefore, everyone in the palace treated the crown prince and Qin Yidong with coldness. Even the servants openly displayed their utter disgust when facing the crown princess. At this point, the maid urged Qin Yidong to leave the imperial city. But Qin Yidong remained undaunted. More than her own suffering, she cared about why the crown prince was treated with such indifference. The maid's face paled with alarm. The crown princess had inquired about a forbidden topic within the palace. The crown prince had been deeply favored as a child, but after the empress suddenly disappeared one day, the once favored crown prince's status plummeted, and the empress's disappearance was considered a sinister event within the inner palace. Thus, the crown prince's background became an unspeakable taboo. Meanwhile, Yuan Zixi was plotting to poison Qin Yidong. If he failed to complete the second prince's task, Yuan Zixi would become his wife. Hearing this, the maid gave a malicious smile. Danger lurked, yet Qin Yidong remained blissfully unaware within the palace walls. She spent the entire day outside, returning to her room exhausted and famished, collapsing onto the floor. Although it was dinner time, Chunxia was not in the room, and the inner palace had not prepared any food for her. Just then, Chunxia returned, fuming, carrying the evening meal. Looking at the watery broth, and especially the stale, rock-hard mantu steam buns, Chunxia and Qin Yidong were instantly enraged. A tiger doesn't show its stripes, and they think I'm a sick cat, already seething with anger. Qin Yidong stormed out of the room, determined to demand an explanation. Inside the imperial kitchen, the royal chef and a matron were discussing Qin Yidong's dinner. She's just an unfavored crown princess. What trouble can she cause with just a title? Even if we give her chaff and weeds to eat, she wouldn't dare complain. After all, in this inner palace, an unfavored concubine is lower than a dog. Before the words had fully left her mouth, a hard manta flew like a cannonball, smashing into the matron's face. Everyone was startled, crying out in alarm, as another mantu stuffed the matron's open mouth. These dogs dare to insult the crown princess by calling her a dog. How incredibly arrogant. Seeing the crown princess arrive, the servants who had just been so loudly disparaging nervously bowed to Qin Yidong. They hadn't expected the crown princess to actually come to the imperial kitchen. Qin Yidong sneered. "The mantu in your mouths is as hard as iron," she said. But in front of the crown princess, they didn't dare claim the mantu was even slightly unpleasant. So Qin Yidong ordered them to eat all of the moldy cold mantu. With that, the nearby royal chef hurriedly stood up and forced himself to eat the rock-hard food. He shoved it into the servant's mouth. Qin Yidong coldly watched the two before him. He wanted to see just how delicious this brick-hard leftover rice truly was. Meanwhile, news of the crown princess causing a commotion in the imperial kitchen reached the second prince's ears. This crown princess, so restless just after entering the palace, creating such a fuss over a meal. If she wasn't just foolish, perhaps she was hiding a secret. That night, the crown prince, having heard of the day's events, hurried to Qin Yidong's room to see how much his wife had suffered. Look at this sneaky little miss, tiptoeing into the imperial kitchen in the dead of night, muttering and cursing, complaining about the dreadful life the crown prince had brought her. Unbeknownst to her, the crown prince, worried about his beloved consort, was already perched on the roof. Seeing his little wife still had the energy to complain, his anxious heart eased. Qin Yidong looked around nervously, famished. After searching for a while, she only found some leftover pastries. Someone had actually left food in the imperial kitchen? Unthinkable. Something's not right. This food must be poisoned. Incredibly alert, but driven by hunger, Qin Yidong had no choice but to help herself. Suddenly, a small chicken in the corner of the kitchen caught the crown princess's eye. Moments later, the poor fowl met its demise. The crown prince silently observed Qin Yidong's actions. Suddenly, a noise came from the distance. Qin Yidong also noticed the newcomer's presence. It was the second prince himself, meeting again in the dead of night in such a manner. If word got out that the crown princess was stealing a chicken in the imperial kitchen in the middle of the night, the crown prince and his wife would lose all face. But the second prince clearly underestimated Qin Yidong. This little incident wasn't enough to threaten her. The atmosphere between them grew tense. Qin Yidong's forced chicken-snatching escapade had failed, thanks to the second prince. If it weren't for their rivalry, the dignified crown princess wouldn't be reduced to this. Liang Xian watched them fall silent. Just as the second prince was about to take Qin Yidong away, the crown prince, hidden on the roof, finally made his appearance. Amazing. Over a single chicken, both princes had shown themselves. A truly once-in-a-millennium spectacle. Qin Yidong was exasperated. Facing his troublesome younger brother, the crown prince went all out. With tensions running high, the second prince was the first to take his leave. After all, this was the royal inner court, and his elder brother was the crown prince. A confrontation here would benefit neither of them. The crown prince looked at his consort. The crisis was averted, leaving only playful banter. But looking at the man who had heartlessly thrown her into the palace, Qin Yidong was in no mood for pleasantries. If it weren't for this jerk, she wouldn't be reduced to stealing chicken wings in the kitchen in the middle of the night. The crown prince sighed inwardly. Qin Yidong fumed. But the next moment, the crown prince pulled her into a tight embrace. Qin Yidong froze, stunned. Then, he carried her to a corner of the courtyard wall. The crown prince calmly walked to a ladder, preparing to escape over the wall with his beloved consort. They climbed onto the roof. The crown prince's air of secrecy sent shivers down Qin Yidong's spine. Did he intend to do that up here on the roof? As they drew closer, Qin Yidong's heart pounded. Flustered, she pushed him away. This seemingly insignificant push nearly sent the esteemed crown prince tumbling off the roof. The tension between them gradually dissipated. Qin Yidong looked at Liang Xian, wanting to know why he had come so late at night. Suddenly, the crown prince asked her if she wanted to become empress in the future. This abrupt change of topic left Qin Yidong completely bewildered. But Liang Xian persisted with the question. Instinctively, she refused. The crown prince was perplexed. He couldn't believe there was a woman in the world who didn't want to be empress. But for Qin Yidong, becoming empress was no different from weaving a cocoon around herself. Despite this, the crown prince smiled faintly. Whether or not she became empress wasn't entirely up to her. The next moment, he received a sharp jab. If it's not up to me, then why ask? Qin Yidong exploded. In the stillness of the night, the The crown prince's cries echoed as his beloved consort landed blow after blow. Later, deep in the night, he escorted Qin Yidong back to her chambers. Despite Qin Yidong's own admission that she had no desire to be empress, in the crown prince's heart, she remained the only possible choice. Liang Xian's eyes glinted. His plan was in motion. What lay ahead was a tempest. The next day, Qin Yidong continued her torturous routine. Mastering the palace dances was no small feat, and these flamboyant displays held no interest for her. She wondered when this agonizing training would finally end. Thankfully, the day offered a few precious moments of respite. Seizing the opportunity, Qin Yidong slipped out of her room. As fate would have it, she immediately bumped into the ghost-like second prince. This fellow seemed to enjoy loitering around the Eastern Palace. Not only that, but he also lurked in corners, eavesdropping on her conversations. Truly ill-mannered. Seeing his sister-in-law's aloofness, the second prince offered a gift, hoping to win Qin Yidong over. He claimed he wanted to be friends, but his heart held a darker purpose. The second prince declared that he understood Qin Yidong's dislike for the crown prince, who kept her confined to the palace while he enjoyed his freedom. It was a blatant attempt to sow discord, which Qin Yidong easily dismissed. He, however, seemed strangely agitated. Next, the second prince proposed a deal. If Qin Yidong would keep him informed of the crown prince's movements, he would help her escape the palace. Qin Yidong feigned excitement. Such a generous offer, it would be rude to refuse. With Qin Yidong's cheerful smile, their bargain was struck. The second prince, delighted with his success, left the Eastern Palace. As he departed, Qin Yidong's expression instantly changed. This so-called palace intrigue was truly tiresome. That night, as Qin Yidong sat alone in her room, she suddenly jumped up. A dark shadow flickered past the door. The crown prince materialized and pulled her into his arms. They hurried to the courtyard. Before either could speak, Qin Yidong punched him in the face. This infuriating man, sneaking around his own home like a ghost. She nearly had a heart attack. The crown prince chuckled ruefully. They climbed to the roof, overlooking the palace walls. Their late-night rendezvous wasn't for idle chatter. As soon as they sat down, Qin Yidong recounted the day's events. This was why she had summoned him in the middle of the night to devise a counter-strategy. The crown prince was taken aback. The deal was clearly advantageous for Qin Yidong, and he had been completely unaware of it. He couldn't understand why she would tell him. Qin Yidong was momentarily speechless. Even if it benefited her, she wouldn't betray him. The crown prince felt a pang of confusion. Despite their long conversations, he still couldn't grasp what she truly desired. But Qin Yidong simply stated that she wanted a peaceful, carefree life. The crown prince looked puzzled. Given their current predicament, Qin Yidong felt the crown prince was far more intelligent and honorable than the second prince. That's why she had decided to side with him. Hearing this, the crown prince couldn't help but smile. The inner workings of the palace were truly chaotic. Thankfully, it wouldn't be long before he could take Qin Yidong away from it all. Meanwhile, the second prince and Qi's most beautiful woman were speeding down the highway in a carriage. They discussed the day's exchange with the crown princess. It turned out the second prince had orchestrated the entire encounter. He knew Qin Yidong would inform the crown prince, yet he proceeded with the deal, hoping to provoke a rash reaction from the crown prince. Under his watchful eye, Yuan Zishi praised his ingenuity. The second prince grasped her delicate chin and promised that if he became emperor, she would be his empress. The next morning, officials gathered in the court. The drought in the western regions had become severe. Ministers urged the emperor to dispatch officials to address the crisis. Before anyone could volunteer, Crown Prince Liang Xian stepped forward and requested to oversee the drought relief efforts. The second prince's eyes narrowed. The emperor pondered for a moment, then granted the crown prince's request. Everyone present knew this was a dangerous undertaking. The second prince, in particular, would undoubtedly exploit this opportunity to create trouble. Despite the risks, the crown prince remained composed. The second prince now harbored murderous intentions towards his elder brother. Meanwhile, Qin Yidong flew into a rage upon learning of her impending departure to the western region. "I'm leaving the palace, all right, but I never agreed to work for the emperor. Neither of you two said anything about me going to manage some drought. You big." Despite Qin Yidong's vehement protests directed at the crown prince, she eventually found herself on the road to the west. Though the heavy responsibility of the western region weighed on her, at least she was free from the confines of the palace. Qin Yidong's personal freedom was finally secured. Seeing the crown prince riding his tall steed only fueled Qin Yidong's anger. Suddenly, a commotion ahead caught everyone's attention. A large group of refugees had gathered on the road. The disaster in the west had clearly reached a critical point. Chuanxia immediately wanted to share some food with the refugees, but Qin Yidong refused. While she pitied them, the small amount of food they had wouldn't alleviate their suffering. Furthermore, openly displaying food in broad daylight would only incite a riot amongst the desperate crowd. The crown prince agreed. They had been traveling for 10 days already. These refugees were desperate enough to resort to cannibalism. One wrong move could spell disaster for the entire caravan. Qin Yidong decided to press on. She would address the food crisis for all the refugees once they reached the western region. The road became increasingly treacherous. Suddenly, a riot erupted amongst the refugees ahead. To quell the unrest, the crown prince went ahead to suppress the riot, leaving Qin Yidong behind to avoid the danger. Qin Yidong quickly assessed the situation. The disaster was even worse than she had imagined. Nearby, refugees whispered amongst themselves. Driven by hunger, they decided to seize Qin Yidong's carriage. If they didn't get food soon, they would all perish in this desolate wasteland. Several refugees charged towards the carriage, desperately crying out for food and water. Hearing the commotion outside, Qin Yidong's heart sank. The worst-case scenario had come to pass. She ordered Chuanxia to flee and return to the forest once the situation calmed down. After sending Chuanxia away, Qin Yidong sighed. The refugees outside continued to roar. She slowly stepped out of the carriage, commanding the refugees to stop. The guards rushed forward, apologizing profusely. If anything happened to the crown princess, they would all be buried with her. Qin Yidong then produced a bag of dried rations. The refugees now had two choices: take the food and leave, or continue to try and seize the carriage. But she would show no mercy. She would kill anyone who tried. Qin Yidong's forceful declaration stunned both the refugees and the guards. Seeing that Qin Yidong was not to be trifled with, the refugees quickly chose the first option. But after receiving all the food and water, they set their sights on the carriage itself. Qin Yidong had already shown them great kindness. If they continued to be greedy, she would have no choice but to draw her sword. The atmosphere grew tense. Finally, after much struggle, the crown prince, who had been leading the way, managed to suppress the riot. Seeing that the situation had calmed down, he immediately turned back to retrieve Qin Yidong. Meanwhile, surrounded by the refugees, Qin Yidong wielded her sword, fending off their attacks. Just then, the crown prince arrived. Seeing Liang Xian return, she breathed a sigh of relief. In an instant, a large contingent of soldiers surrounded and protected the carriage. Seeing that Qin Yidong had managed to control the situation before his arrival, Liang Xian praised his beloved consort. Qin Yidong smiled proudly, but then a thought struck her. He had taken so long to return. Had he deliberately left her to deal with the riot? But remembering that Liang Xian had also faced a life-or-death situation, she couldn't help but embrace him. The crown prince whispered something in Qin Yidong's ear, causing her to blush crimson. In response, she promptly slapped him across the face. Time passed. After enduring many hardships, Qin Yidong finally arrived at the main city in the western region. Looking at the bright red handprint on the crown prince's face, Qin Yidong felt no remorse. Hand in hand, they arrived at the luxurious mansion the crown prince had acquired in the west 2 months prior. It turned out his disappearance had been due to preparations for their new home. Together, they entered the mansion. Just as they stepped inside, Qin Yidong suddenly realized she had forgotten something, but she couldn't quite put her finger on it. Meanwhile, deep in the night, Chuanxia huddled alone in the forest, shivering with fear. Recalling Qin Yidong's disappearance during the spring and summer, the crown prince quickly brought him back to the residence. The poor young servant almost thought he would perish in the western region. Just then, the crown prince, exhausted from a long day, finally returned to the residence. The drought in the western region was even more severe than initially anticipated. If sufficient water sources couldn't be found, the entire western region would become a wasteland. The consequences would be catastrophic. It was a pity that artificial rainmaking didn't exist in this era. If they wanted to completely alleviate the drought, they would have to resort to more unconventional methods. Seeing that Qin Yi Dong seemed to have something to say, the crown prince decided to place the heavy burden of managing the disaster directly onto Qin Yi Dong's shoulders. After all, he was the official crown princess and should share the affairs of state with his husband. Saying this, Liang Xian gently kissed Qin Yi Dong's forehead. Faced with such a sudden display of affection, Qin Yi Dong blushed. Flustered and shy, he quickly dodged Liang Xian's advance. Unbeknownst to them, everything that transpired was being observed by Xian Run, hidden in the shadows. The crown prince, sensing something amiss, gave a cold smile. Elsewhere, Xian Ren reported everything that had happened within the crown prince's residence to the assassin. From the moment Qin Yi Dong and the crown prince embarked on their journey, they had been targeted in an assassination plot. However, the assassin's primary target was the crown prince, while Qin Yi Dong was to be captured alive and brought back to the capital. During this period, every move made by the crown prince and Qin Yi Dong was being documented by Xian Run and reported to the assassin. Late at night, as Qin Yi Dong slept soundly, a piercing scream suddenly startled him awake. The terrified crown princess, startled out of his wits, tumbled out of bed. The next morning, the poor crown princess, disguised as a young man to investigate the drought, braved the scorching summer heat and visited several villages. The current disaster was severe. If a solution couldn't be found quickly, it was feared that the disaster victims throughout the western region would revolt. Currently, all the reservoirs in the western region were completely dry. Therefore, Qin Yi Dong had to race against time and hurry to the last remaining village. Meanwhile, at the military camp on the western border, the crown prince was negotiating with the general stationed there. The crown prince had noticed that the general, responsible for guarding the border, had recently become very close to the second prince. This was an unspoken taboo in the imperial court. However, the crown prince hadn't come to punish wrongdoing, but rather to sway the influential general to his side. Now, all the forces on the border had aligned themselves with the crown prince. The general realized the situation was unfavorable, especially since his eldest son was even closer to the second prince. To protect his son's life, the general had no choice but to pledge allegiance to the crown prince. This was precisely what Liang Xian had intended. Meanwhile, Qin Yi Dong, while visiting the villages, encountered trouble. A group of masked assassins ambushed them. They hadn't expected to encounter assassins in such a remote and desolate place. The assassins swarmed them, quickly surrounding Qin Yi Dong and his entourage. Left with no other option, the guards used their lives to cover Qin Yi Dong's retreat. A flurry of flashing blades ensued, and Qin Yi Dong was relentlessly pursued by the assassins. Suddenly, Qin Yi Dong stopped. He looked at the assassin's discarded blade on the ground. To protect himself and those around him, his only choice was to pick up the weapon and fight back against the assassin's deadly pursuit. Fortunately, the nearby guards intervened, resolving the immediate threat. The lead assassin issued a death order. Qin Yi Dong must be captured alive. Qin Yi Dong scoffed at this, throwing the blade he'd picked up at the assassin. With no other choice, the guards first secured the seemingly defenseless Ye, then joined Qin Yi Dong in the fight. Qin Yi Dong's fighting prowess was surprisingly fierce. Even the assassins were taken aback. They hadn't expected this seemingly delicate person to be able to hold their own against their trained attacks. Even more unexpectedly, during the stalemate, Qin Yi Dong discarded his weapon and caught the assassin's deadly blow with his bare hand. He then swiftly kicked the assassin away. The remaining assassins scattered in defeat. As they fled, Qin Yi Dong collapsed to the ground. These assassins had dared to attack in broad daylight, and their target was the crown prince's beloved consort. There had to be a more powerful force manipulating them from behind the scenes. Left with no other option, Qin Yi Dong had to postpone his village visits and return to the residence to recover. Back in his room, Qin Yi Dong cried out in pain, seeing the severity of his master's injuries. Chun Xia felt heartbroken and couldn't help but scold him. But Qin Yi Dong explained that if he had chosen to run and let the guards take the blows, the casualties would have been far worse. And placing his life in another's hands was inherently precarious. Just then, the crown prince arrived in haste. Upon hearing of Qin Yi Dong's injury, he'd ridden at breakneck speed from the border. Fortunately, Qin Yidong's life wasn't in danger. Otherwise, even the crown prince would surely be filled with regret. Had something truly befallen Qin Yidong, the prince would have made those accompanying guards pay with their lives. Hearing the prince's words, Qin Yidong was taken aback. Just moments ago, the prince's gaze had been so tender. Now, in the blink of an eye, he spoke with such chilling ruthlessness. Perhaps this was the crown prince's true nature. To change the subject, Qin Yidong quickly brought up the drought in the western regions. The northwest was mostly sunny. Previously, the prince, in an effort to prevent drought, had commissioned the construction of numerous reservoirs. But in this scorching summer heat, such efforts were merely a drop in the bucket. To permanently resolve the drought in the northwest, a massive, nationwide project was required. The excavation and construction of a canal to divert water from the south to the north. A suitable route needed to be found within the country, starting from the rain-rich south and digging a channel that would extend all the way north. Diverting the southern waterways to the northwestern border would resolve the drought. Hearing Qin Yidong propose such a grand solution, even the crown prince couldn't help but feel a flicker of doubt. Such an ingenious idea. Could he have conceived it himself? Qin Yidong could only sheepishly admit to it. At this, the prince's gaze sharpened. Since there was a solution, the prince demanded that Qin Yidong, once recovered from his injuries, quickly draft a detailed proposal. Qin Yidong felt a surge of resentment. After a brief rest, the assassins who had attacked him earlier were captured by the prince's men. It wouldn't be long before the true mastermind behind the attack was revealed. At that moment, the prince suddenly ordered his most elite shadow guard, Manhwa, to secretly investigate the Qin family's background. Qin Yidong's proposal for the south to north water diversion had inadvertently aroused the prince's suspicion. Meanwhile, Qin Yidong tossed and turned in bed. The day's events had created a slight rift between them. He didn't want further conflict with the prince. Suddenly, a strange noise came from the window. Still on edge after the assassination attempt, Qin Yidong grabbed a pair of scissors and lunged towards the window. He stopped just in time. Otherwise, he would have inadvertently widowed himself. The sudden attack triggered Qin Yidong's chest pains. This blasted prince was always sneaking around, slipping into someone's room in the dead of night. Just as Qin Yidong was about to scold him, the drunken prince lunged forward. The overwhelming scent of alcohol made Qin Yidong feel like he'd fallen into a vat of wine. He tried to push the prince away, but the next moment, the prince looked at him with such pitiful eyes, like a large, forlorn dog, afraid Qin Yidong would abandon him. The usually boisterous prince was unexpectedly docile when drunk. He clung to Qin Yidong, murmuring about sleeping together. Qin Yidong meant to refuse, but looking at Liang Xian's eyes, a surge of maternal protectiveness welled up within him. They nestled together sweetly. Liang Xian was like a child, asking for cuddles and kisses, then demanding a lullaby. Qin Yidong thought for a moment and began humming a childhood tune. The familiar melody evoked memories of his mother for the prince. Suddenly, the drunken haze lifted, and he pinned Qin Yidong beneath him. The next morning, Qin Yidong walked in the courtyard, replaying the prince's question from their intimate moments. Where did he truly come from? Qin Yidong was filled with apprehension. Had he acted too differently, arousing the prince's suspicion? How should he respond? He couldn't possibly tell Liang Xian the truth, that he was a time traveler from the future. Meanwhile, the assassin's identity had been revealed, an assassin from the Yuan family estate. The prince sneered. His second brother, orchestrating the assassination through the Taoist priest Zhou Quan, had already approached the Yuan family to serve as scapegoats. And the foolish Yuan Zixi genuinely believed the second prince would make her his empress. He wondered what she would think upon seeing the assassin's sorry state. Suddenly, a ghostly voice echoed from outside the prison cell, casting an eerie pall over the room.